We're very fortunate in this country that we have a garage where we can go, and like the DIY culture is very much an American and European thing. And people just can't do that other places. One of the first times I went to Indonesia, like kind of watching and like, yeah, I do this. And they were like, oh, you don't go over there, you're the rider. And I'm like, oh, okay. The first practice I do a stoppie, which is on the front wheel. And I grab the front brakes and the brake pads literally shoot out of the calipers. And the promoter comes running over and he's like, what are you doing? Why'd you crash the bike? And I didn't say anything. I walked over and picked up the brake pads and I was like this.
Did you know what it was?
Yeah, I knew what it was. He started whacking the mechanics and chewing them out in Indonesian.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 119 of the Andrew Digest podcast. I'm pretty sure on the last episode I said 117 again, so we skipped 118, but that's okay. But if you're new to the show, thank you so much for checking it out. My show is all about having amazing conversations with some of the most fascinating people that I know. And before we jump into the show, I wanted to mention that this episode has been brought to you by Eyes Ahead Media, which is a video production company here in Atlanta, focusing on long-term video strategy and content for brands and companies. So if you're a brand or a company or a person or an influencer who needs some video stuff, you need a video strategy. Obviously, video is the number one way to attract new people to your business. It's the number one compelling way to get people to know what's up. Check them out, eyesaheadmedia.com. So today, my guest is Aaron Twite. He is a professional motorcycle stunt rider. He's one of the most traveled motorcycle stunt riders in the world. He's visited a lot of different countries over the years. Over the last decade, he's been traveling and performing as a professional motorcycle stunt rider. And if you don't know what a motorcycle stunt rider does or what that looks like, definitely go check out his Instagram. He's got tons and tons of amazing videos of him doing all kinds of crazy tricks. He's a madman. But on this episode, we talked all about how he got into the sport of professional motorcycle stunt riding. We talked about how his travels have actually shaped his worldview and how he looks, at relationships and people all over the world. And we also talked about some philosophical, deep kind of stuff. It was a really awesome podcast. I loved having Aaron on this episode. So please, without any further ado, give it up for my man, Aaron Twite. All right, Aaron, it's Aaron Twite. Mm-hmm. Is that how you pronounce it?
That's right.
Do a lot of people think on your Instagram it's Aaron T. White? Because I thought that the first time. I thought it was like Aaron T. White.
Oh, yeah.
And then, but like in your name, it says Aaron Twite.
Okay, yeah. It's funny, one of my buddies, or recent friend, his name is Tyler Witt, but he does T. Witty. And so it's basically my last name, but with an extra T at the end. And so when I met him, and he was like, dude, that's like almost the same Instagram handle, but like with whatever. I was like, yeah, it's really random, but it's my name. I was born first, so.
I claim it.
I got it.
I'm the Twite, Twite the first. Well, dude, this is awesome. I'm glad you're here. I feel like we got to start this off by giving a shout out to Steele Davis for making this connection.
Yeah, he set it up.
Yes, he definitely set it up. Steele was my guest on episode like
108, I think.
Yeah, 108. That sounds about right.
I watched it today.
Yeah. How long have you known Steele for?
I've known Steele for, man, I'm bad with time. 4 or 5 years.
Okay, nice. Yeah. And did you guys meet like through?
We met through rock climbing.
Oh, okay, cool.
And like a year or two after I met Steele, he got into drones, and he got into like RC planes. He started working at like some hobby shop. Well, he's at REI, and then he went to some hobby shop and he started flying airplanes, and then he'd show up with little stupid little helicopters, and then he started getting into drones. And like it's funny because I watched his whole career explode. And he's always just been my buddy Steele, and now he's like one of the best.
Now he's Mr. Steele.
Mr. Steele, whatever. Yeah. But it's cool. I'm like super proud of him because.
Did you have the stash before he did, or did he have the stash first?
No, he said that's been his thing forever. But I did this for different reasons. This is like the first time I'm ever able to grow facial hair. Like I always have like a baby face, and I can't.
Did you take some pills or something, or what?
No, I've been growing this since like December. So it's like
awesome.
So it's like if I shave it, it's like, can I commit this much time to doing this again? So it's one of those things where like I'll just run this out as far as I can go to see how it is, and if it's awkward, fine, but I'll know for the rest of my life I'm not a mustache guy.
That's true. How you feeling about it? I kind of like it.
Dude, I'm mixed. I'm mixed. I'll ask people every once in a while. You'll get somebody who's actually honest and be like, I don't like it. You look stupid. And it's funny because like I appreciate the people who are like, know it looks bad more than 5 people who say, oh yeah, it looks good, because you can guess that maybe 4 of those 5 people are just lying to you.
Yeah.
But the person who had the guts to say, no, you look foolish with that stuff on your lip, that's solid advice.
You're like, wow. I like that. It's like the thing we were just talking about, having the thing in your teeth. It's like, you know, you got something in your teeth. It's like, dude, just freaking tell me if I got something in my teeth. Don't like stare at it and pretend it's not there.
Yeah.
Same thing with the mustache, just like looking at the stash the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of those things where I feel like with the stash, you gotta like own it, you know?
Yeah.
You can't be like, oh, you know, I was thinking about it, and like you know, whatever. Like you either like rock the stash or you're like, no stash.
Yeah, totally. Well, I'm a slow grower, so it's...
The
awkward phase is like 2 months long, so you don't want to go through that ever again.
Yeah, exactly. I am not follically challenged when it comes to all kinds of hair. I'm a pretty hairy dude.
You've got some.
Which is cool with the beard, because I didn't ever think that I was gonna be a beard guy, because my dad like never really was.
Yeah.
And he's always like super clean shaven, but like as soon as I started to do it, I'm like, you know what, I kind of like this, and because I kind of have a baby face as well, so it's like, you know what, I think people take me a little more seriously when I have the beard, so I'll rock it for a while.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Yeah, because I've shaved it down completely a couple of times since having it. Just, you know, same thing, trying it out. Like, hey, maybe I should go back, and then I'm like, nope, going right back to the beard.
Yeah,
it's too weird for me. Can't do it anymore.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
But anyways, dude, I kind of want to get into your story, and you know, we haven't. I'll throw an intro into the beginning, so people already kind of know what you're about and everything with motorcycles and all that kind of stuff. But kind of like what you're saying with Steele, you've kind of seen his whole progression with drones. Where did it all start for you? Because you've been riding motorcycles for like 10 years or something like that.
I've been riding motorcycles. I've been stunt riding for, God, what year is it?
It's 2019 now, so
16 years.
Wow. That's awesome.
I started when I was in college. So the whole story is I was on the traditional path, like go to college, go to university. I was at Georgia Tech for engineering.
Wow.
And I was never allowed to have any motorcycles until I could buy it myself. So I was like 22. I bought my first motorcycle. It was a sport bike. It was a Suzuki GSXR 600. It was yellow and black. It was ridiculous. And so I got that. My dad was super furious, of course. And while I was in college, I started riding. And as soon as I started riding, I met these other guys who rode on the street, and they do wheelies and all that typical biker boy nonsense that goes on. And then some guys were like sitting on the gas tank, putting their feet over and doing wheelies. I was like, that's ridiculous. How did you do that? And so I just started riding with them, learned wheelies, got good at wheelies immediately. And then the sport of stunt riding was starting right around that time, which is like 2003. And it was very small. It still is small, but it was one of those things where like everybody in the whole country knew who everybody was, because there's like 4 of us, you know. So some guy would do something, be like, oh, did you see what's his face did? And oh man, let me try that. So we started having competitions. So like every rider would come to Florida and compete. So I started to compete because it was just kind of a way to like connect with the rest.
And this was like freestyle stunt kind of stuff?
Yeah, so it's
like how
dude,
who would, was there judges, or like how did you decide?
So it's like figure skating kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like you
have a routine or whatever.
Yeah, there's like a panel of judges. There's a guy that judges the difficulty of what you're doing. There's a guy that judges your exexecution, like how well did you do it.
Kind of like skateboarding, like SLS skateboarding or whatever.
Yeah, or like I always like to say it's like flatland BMX with horsepower.
Nice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's hard to describe too, because a lot of people don't know what the sport is. Like,
yeah, until they see a video of you, like, you know, doing some crazy shit that people have never seen anyone do on a motorcycle before.
Right.
Except that they've only seen people maybe on a bike or something.
Or YouTube video of some idiot on the freeway or something. Which
yeah.
We've all been there. That's like where I started. So
yeah.
And,
did you get into much trouble with that first bike that you had?
Oh yeah. I've been arrested many times.
Yeah.
Because apparently it's pretty illegal to do wheelies.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously it's kind of like danger to yourself, danger to others, but like...
Yeah, it's technically reckless driving, so...
And that's a pretty serious
I get it,
offense.
yeah. Well, now it's an arrestable offense.
Wow.
The unfortunate thing is everywhere we practice are like private areas, like industrial areas or parking lots that are usually closed off, that there's no traffic, there's no danger or anything. We'll just crash, and then the bike slides through the parking lot. You get up, no harm, no foul.
Yeah, except for the money.
Yeah, right. But I mean, it's all part of the sport.
Exactly, I'm sure.
But apparently reckless driving applies anywhere. You can get reckless driving in your driveway.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Legally,
I wouldn't know that.
A cop can go to a drag strip and write everybody there reckless driving.
I've heard of that before. I've heard that, like, if they wanted to, technically.
Yeah, because the way the laws are written, it's so vague. So it's usually up to the courts to see if the courts are going to enforce it. And I live in Cobb County, and Cobb County is so strict that they are just like. I had a prosecutor tell my lawyer one time, after an officer arrested me and realized, yeah, you know, I was out of control. Like, I had stopped, I had pulled over, I was like this, and he like tackled me off the bike. And later he was like, yeah, I got carried away. You should drop the charges. The prosecutor told my lawyer, we've got him, we're going to give him something. And he's like, we didn't do anything. The officer said that you shouldn't. And they're like, well, we've still got him, we're going to do it. So that's kind of like the mentality of that situation.
Do you think it's mostly they want to make an example of you, kind of?
Yeah, maybe, probably. I mean, every prosecutor's different. They're people, they're humans.
Kind of like the story with Steele when he got, put in jail for the drone shit.
Right, they're trying to make a point.
They're trying to make a point.
Right.
Yeah. Do you think that it's gotten better now that, like, people are a little more scared to do crazy stuff because it's an arrestable offense? Or do you think it's even worse?
No. It is
kind of like
what it is. Well, there's like two sides of the sport. There's the street riding guys, which is where basically we all come from. That riding wheelies on the streets, and if you get arrested doing that, you don't have a defense. You're like, yeah, I was doing that. Like, I get it. It was stupid. And that's still as popular as ever.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I don't do that anymore just because it's...
You've gotten it out of your system.
I got it out of my system.
And you get to do it for professional. You're a professional now, so you do that.
Right.
You get paid to do that.
Right, basically. Yeah. So, but I mean, guys still do it, and I get it. I'm not gonna say anything negative about that. I understand why they do it, but it's just as popular as ever. So.
What do you think it was? I mean, obviously the speed and the excitement and the adrenaline and the danger is kind of like what draws people to riding a motorcycle in the first place. But was it any different for you, or was it pretty much just all those things and you just thought it was what was that impulse that made you actually go out and spend your hard-earned cash to get that first motorcycle?
It's one of those things where, for me, it could have been almost anything. It could have been skateboarding, it could have been snowboarding, it could have been baseball, whatever it may be. I'm the type of person that when I start doing something, I want to do it as best as I possibly can. And the cool thing about stunt riding was, since I was starting into it when it was such a nascent sport, it was still being discovered, it was still being explored. Like, we've invented tricks, like I've been there when a new trick was invented, like different ways of riding, new styles. So it's always a creative thing that you're only limited by your imagination to a certain degree and the amount of time you're willing to put into it.
You were like a pioneer, so you were kind of like creating the sport with everybody.
Right, yeah, and it's still a sport that there are pioneers in. And so it's one of those things where you get so focused that it's not even about adrenaline, it's more of this is a skill that I can hone to perfection, and it's such a wild and dangerous thing. There's these bikes are made to go 200 miles an hour on a racetrack, and you're taking all that power and you're applying it in a way that's unconventional and not meant to be used that way. So it's almost like such an intense focus that is involved in doing that and honing that in, that that's the addiction. It's not the adrenaline, it's the pursuit of really honing in a skill and figuring out and making something your own, and then throwing style into it. You know what I mean? It's like the 3 rules of doing anything. Safety third. First thing is making it look good. The second thing is making sure it looks really good, and then make sure you don't crash doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you first, you said you got that first yellow and black bike, when did you kind of start taking it more seriously? And you said you started going to Florida and doing some competitions and stuff like that?
Yeah, started doing some competitions, and then started getting really good, started placing well in competitions, and then making connections. Some guys in Europe would come over for these competitions.
Was there money in it at the time?
Yeah, there was money. Not a lot, but there's money, and there's some sponsorships. You get some free tires and whatever else it may be. Helmets, jackets, that's always nice.
Yeah.
Some European guys would come over, and it was a little bit more established as a sport in Europe at the time. So I met a guy named Christian Pfeiffer, who was a generation older than us, and he was a Red Bull athlete. He had been a Red Bull athlete with trials and hard enduro riding, and in Europe he was a real deal professional motorcycle rider who was a stunt rider also. So he had all these disciplines, and then he became a stunt rider. And he came over, and I got to know him, and through him I was able to get invited to an international competition in Zurich, Switzerland, where they like flew me over there. They shipped my bike over there. They put us up. They like paved the 5th floor of an indoor arena in the middle of winter in Zurich, Switzerland. It was like next level. I like skipped so many levels of things that I thought were awesome for this. And this is when I was in university. I was at Tech for engineering school, and I freaking hated that. I hated everything about it.
What type of engineering was it?
Mechanical engineering.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes with the bike stuff, kind of with motorcycles a little bit.
Not
maybe?
really. It doesn't really. Like, it's not even a vocational style. Like, you're just learning. It's math. It's calculus times physics, which includes calculus. You know what I'm saying? So it was one of those things where I was like, oh, this sucks. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But so I went over and did that and was like, oh my gosh, I'm traveling. Somebody's paying for me to travel. And like, I'm seeing the world. And it's not only like I'm seeing the world, I'm here like riding my motorcycle doing it. And so like, I got home and I started to actually do more things like that, and then picking up shows as far as like, you go and you perform and they pay you for it is basically like monster trucks or maybe a racetrack or whatever. And so I quit school and had a part-time job, and then was just riding and training for comps and
were your parents like angry at like the dropout situation, or like?
Yeah, kind of, but it was like I was putting myself through school. I had Hope Scholarship at the time. Like I didn't have any student loans, so they were kind of like, "Oh, it's on you. You know, your future's on you."
That's awesome.
You know what I mean?
That's cool that they're supportive, because I think a lot of parents, they almost put some of their identity in like how their kid does and stuff.
Yeah.
And like no one wants to go to the Christmas party like, oh, how's Aaron doing? Oh, well, he dropped out of school and he's smoking crack. You know, like you know, like that reflects poorly on them. So like I think a lot of parents, like it's a really safe kind of you know, it's kind of like a safe route to do the whole college thing, because like, oh, well, he's in mechanical engineering school in Georgia Tech, and then the conversation ends. It's like, oh, good for him, you know, and it's like, oh, well, Aaron just dropped out and now he's a professional motorcycle rider, and it's like, whoa, is it dangerous? Is he gonna, you know, blah blah blah. But that's cool that they were kind of like, well, it's on you.
Yeah, yeah. At least, you know, some people, when their kids drop out, it's like they drop out because they don't like it. Mm-hmm. It's like they've burned a bridge before they've built another bridge. Where in this case, at least that I had, I'm replacing one thing with another thing. I'm replacing a traditional path with something that is new and unexplored, but has potential to be life-changing. Mm-hmm. And at least it wasn't just like a discarding of one thing for nothing.
That's very true. Yeah, I think that's where a lot of kids, like, they want to drop out, but they don't have that other thing.
Right.
So they just keep doing it.
Right.
Because, like, what else is there?
Right, yeah.
You know, it would be kind of embarrassing. It's like, oh, I'm dropping out of college to do what?
Right.
You know,
no direction.
So I'll just keep going and see where it takes me.
Right.
Sometimes that's the move. Sometimes all you can do is just kind of keep doing it until an opportunity pops up or whatever. But
right.
I think but you get what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
But so you started like traveling the world and all this stuff, dropped out of college, and were you traveling like with friends and stuff like that too? Like
sometimes. Sometimes, like sometimes I would go with other riders. A lot of times I go alone and meet riders there.
Was it kind of like a pinch me moment? Like, I can't believe this is my job. I can't believe this is my life. Or was this like, this feels right? Like I should have been doing this a long time ago.
Kind of. It was more like you'd just be somewhere and then you'd see things that you'd seen in movies. Just like, well, here, I'm in Monaco and this is what the Mediterranean looks like. And this parking lot's full of Lamborghinis and Ferraris, and that guy's probably like French royalty. And this is what this looks like. Right. And it just got to be like that pattern of like I stopped carrying my camera with me anymore, because I was like, I'm sick of carrying this around. Like like cell phone pictures became enough to be like, I'm cataloging all these memories and experiences, and it just turned into that. Like I've got stories and experiences and friends, and like that became more important than the riding thing, which it was like a balance of, I'm here to ride. I've already developed the skills for that, but now I've got all these new friends, and you've got these communities in other countries, and that's when it really started to change my life, was when you make connections with other cultures and other people that aren't on a tourist level, but on like another level where it's like I still talk to these people decades later.
It's like having family, across the world.
It is, yeah.
And that's like priceless.
Yeah.
It's a cool feeling, because I've had similar things where like you feel like this isn't just a tourist experience. Yeah. This is like I feel like an actual bond. Like these are my real friends. This is my like family, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And that's, so like in the motorcycle stunt riding, that's such a funny thing. Like we went through like this whole phase of trying to figure out what to call our sport, because everybody called us stunt riders, and that was like a black mark of shame, because of like, oh, stunt riders, these dirtbags who are riding freewheels are like, no, we're trying to be legitimate. So we'll call it freestyle sport bike riding, or we'll call it this, or we'll call it this. And you'd start telling people that and be like, what is that? And eventually the conversation was, well, what do you do? I'm a professional street bike, sport bike, stunt rider, sport bike rider, stunt rider, sport bike rider. What is that? I'm a stunt rider. Oh, stunt rider, okay. So we evolved to we're gonna clean this up. No, we're just back to calling it stunt riding.
Yeah.
People know, so we're just gonna have to go with that.
Yeah, that's kind of hilarious. I feel like a lot of different areas of life kind of apply like that, where it's like, so what do you technically do? And you're like, well, I'm a this, and you have like some fancy title.
Yeah.
Well, I just sell software. Or they can boil it down like, well, it's actually not that interesting. I just talk on the phone to people or whatever. Oh, that's a cool sounding job. Nah, not really.
Yeah.
But obviously with stunt riding, people are like, oh, stunt riding, that's pretty badass.
Yeah.
When you meet people and you tell people you're a stunt rider, do you feel do people judge you right off the bat? They're like, oh, this guy's probably crazy.
Yeah,
this guy's got a death wish or something.
In my social circles, in my social life, for example, in the climbing world, I would never tell people what I really did, because it was such a pain in the butt of explaining to them, or they would treat you different, or some people would automatically think that you were famous and then treat you differently. So every time somebody asked me what I did, I would either tell them I was in the motorcycle industry, or I was in the event industry, or I was a welder. Welder was always a good one, because then they would just treat you like a blue-collar Joe, and you can kind of figure out who people really are.
Huh. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, when people just automatically put those labels on you right away just because of what you do or whatever.
Right. Or they think you're supposed to be. The new thing with social media is even more ridiculous. If you have more than 10,000 followers, people think that you have something important.
You got that K next to your follower count.
Or something, yeah, right, yeah. And it's like, oh man, you'll meet someone and be like, oh, I'll follow you on Instagram. Like, oh, you've got a lot of followers. And I've got a lot of people who've liked pictures of me doing stuff on my motorcycle. That's all that means. And it's strange how people act about that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a form of currency in today's day and age. Especially in LA and stuff. They'll if you don't have a certain amount of followers, you're like nothing.
Yeah.
It's like your social status is related to that. It's kind of like that episode of Black Mirror. Do you watch Black Mirror? Have you ever seen that show?
Yeah.
You know the episode where they have the social ranking and stuff?
Yes.
And
that girl is killing herself to try to get bumped up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but that's kind of you've kind of fallen in because you've got this cool niche and you've got this cool skill that you've honed.
Yeah.
And like you said, you got really good, and then you made sure it looked really good, and so people love that kind of shit. And of course, it certain things like that just goes stupid viral on all kinds of social media, because they're like, holy shit, I've never even seen a motorcycle do that before, let alone the style and ease that this guy is making it look like. He makes it look so easy, and of course it's not.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been fortunate enough to travel so much that I've hit enough people around the world I've been exposed to, or have been exposed to whatever I do, that I've just gathered a large group of people who will follow what I do from all over the world. And I don't even think of it as following or followers. I don't like that term, because it means it sets up some kind of hierarchy of they're following something. These are people who are just keeping in touch with what I do. And it's
fans is kind of a weird one too. They're my fans. Woo!
Yeah.
It's not really like that. It's more just people that are genuinely interested or whatever.
Yeah.
Makes sense, though.
I've never wanted to be famous. I never did this to be famous. I did it because it was something to be good at, and it was a skill, and it was, holy shit, I can actually make a living doing what I love if I figure out these other marketing tools to use it. And then the way people act about, it's not something I ever cared about. I never wanted to be out there.
It's kind of just a byproduct.
Yeah, it can be a
good
byproduct
at what you do and everything.
So I guess for that reason, I don't ever see you were saying that, numbers and followers and the whole social media is a form of currency. I definitely see that, but it's important to me to be careful to never actually use that as a currency or something to place. I see it's important from a marketing standpoint. I do it for a job. I try to get numbers because it helps my sponsors.
Totally.
It helps to get exposure for those things that I do, to share things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But to say that it's some kind of
social ranking or something.
It's not a reflection of my value as a person. There's a lot of people who are just total pieces of shit who have millions of followers. And that doesn't change the fact that they're probably pretty gross people on the inside. And I think it's important that no matter what you do, or I do, or anybody does, that it's who you are when nobody's watching. What you do with that stranger that you bump into at Target, and how you treat those people, and how they see you is more important than all that other nonsense.
For sure. There was a story recently about this chick who was like 16 or 18 or something like that, and she had like 2.3 million followers or something. And it was because she blew up on that app called Musical.ly, where there's a bunch of like teenagers like lip syncing to songs and stuff. I think it became TikTok now. Anyways, doesn't matter. She blew up because of that, and she also had some other friends that got really famous. So she just had millions of followers, but they didn't really care about like, you know, they just thought she was pretty, or you know, they liked her old videos. But on Instagram, she really wasn't that quote unquote relevant or whatever. Recently, she tried to make a T-shirt line or something. And she made this whole post talking about how she needed to sell at least 36 shirts, and she couldn't. And she had 2.3 million followers. And people were talking about it, like, how crazy is it that this girl, and people were making this argument of like, oh, the influencer bubble is popping or something. It's like, it's not really about that. It was just like the fact that this girl, you know, you think that the follower count automatically means fame, success, and whatever. It's like the numbers don't really mean any kind of monetary value at all.
Right.
It's just like how many eyeballs are looking when you post something.
Yeah, and the numbers don't tell you who those eyeballs belong to, and they don't tell you why they're watching.
And they don't tell you if they're going to convert or not either. Like, can you actually even sell them anything? In her case, obviously not.
Right.
Because most of her fans are probably like 12.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Or whatever. You know. Whatever the case might be. It was also probably her marketing probably sucked too.
Sure.
Like she probably didn't go about it the right way.
Sure.
Apparently the T-shirts weren't even shirts that it wasn't even anything like her own style. Like it was kind of just like, oh, maybe I can make some money throwing my name on a shirt or whatever.
Right.
And it wasn't something she would actually wear. But I just thought it was kind of funny and kind of a relevant thing, because it was a pretty recent story that you know, your follower count doesn't really mean shit as far as your business. So, but I wanted to actually kind of go back a little bit even before you started riding and stuff, to talk about like, you know, just like growing up. So you grew up in Atlanta area, right?
I've been here since I was 5, so basically,
cool. And siblings or?
Yeah, I've got 2 younger sisters.
Okay, nice. So you're the oldest boy.
Yeah.
Did you ever get in trouble for like messing with your younger sisters?
Yeah, of course.
I remember my friend, I have one younger brother, and I thought it was bad when I would like kind of beat up on my younger brother. But I remember my friend, he had 2 younger sisters, and he was always getting shit because they're like, you can't beat up on your younger sisters. They're younger than you. They're girls, blah, blah, blah. Did you always feel like you were getting ganged up on?
I don't remember any of that. Like everything that I've done, I always get secondhand told through. I was like, yeah, we had a great childhood. And my sister's like, you used to beat me with a plastic hammer all the time. And I was like, I didn't do that. My parents were like, yeah, you did all the time. Like, oh.
You're like, oh, must have blocked that out.
I guess I was a little jerk then. Sorry.
That's funny. Yeah, I feel like some of that stuff you kind of like forget, and also it's interesting how like memories are not solidified. It's not like an SD card where you're writing the exact file. It's like a weird mixture of emotions and what you were feeling at the time.
Yeah, you probably remember how you were feeling at the time. You don't just remember the facts of the matter or how they were feeling.
Exactly. Yeah, and like you maybe one person tells a story and you're like, that's not how it went at all.
Right.
I was there, not him, and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
You're like, no, I could have sworn, blah, blah, blah. And you know, memories are weird like that.
Yeah.
Did you, so you grew up in, what high school did you go to?
I went to North Cobb.
North Cobb, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you kind of been in the area for
a
long time. And you went to Georgia Tech. Did you want to go there, or was that just like a...
No, dude, the only reason I went to college is because that's what you're supposed to do. That was the formula. And so I went to KSU first before it was the mega monolith it is now.
Yeah.
And had Hope Scholarship, had good grades, and college was easy. So I didn't have a major, didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, well, Georgia Tech's kind of hard, and I'm mechanically good, and mechanical engineering's a hard thing there, so like I'll try that. So I transferred to Georgia Tech and was going just kind of through the motions there, and like never got connected to anybody, never got connected to the community, never like it just didn't feel right. I was like, this is the jobs that you get, and these are the people I'm going to work with, and I mean, nothing against them. Like I look back and, you know, everybody has like a selfish way of looking at things, like, oh, those weren't my kinds of people. Well, I wasn't their kind of person. Like they were all in the majority. I was the odd one out of there, so I didn't belong in that situation.
What do you think it was about it? Like you just never could picture yourself working in like an environment like, you know, a cubicle type environment? Or
yeah, it just seems so boring, and I don't know. I mean, it's not for me to say that what's boring, because people probably think what I do is a waste of time.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, it is a waste of time. And engineering degrees are some of the most important. Like engineering jobs are some of the most important things that make society what it is.
Yeah.
You know, if you really look at it from a really macroscopic view, but it's just not.
Yeah, I was listening to this podcast recently where they were talking about how like America recently has become a country that focuses all on like litigation and lawyers. All the lawyers are like politicians, and like a lot of Asian countries, like all of their politician people are like engineers. And like we fix all of our problems with like making laws and litigation, and like they fix a lot of their problems by like engineering and like social engineering and building and whatever. And it's pretty interesting because it makes a lot of sense. And like, you know, there's only so much litigation can do, you know? Like suing everybody can only do so much.
Right, right.
You at one point, someone's got to build something. At some point, someone's got to create something rather than just, you know, fix all the broken stuff or whatever.
Right, but then it also raises the question of social engineering and, you know, what are the risks behind social engineering, and who are the social engineers, and what gives them the right or the facility to be social engineers. And then it's like, well, if you've got an engineer who's really good at engineering thermodynamic things or like mechanical things, like what makes them versed in sociology or the economy or like, and you know what I mean? So you run into all these things as far as like, if you're going to let experts run everything, well, who are the experts?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the whole thing with the, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with Jordan Peterson.
Oh yeah.
He talks about like, you know, once we start going down this rabbit hole of policing speech and stuff, who's to say what's hate speech? Because you're saying that this is hate speech, and I'm almost inclined to agree with you on that. But who are these holier than thou? Who are these experts that are saying what is hate speech? What is calling someone the wrong pronoun hate speech? Is calling someone the wrong name, a dead name or whatever, if they're trans? Is that hate speech?
Right.
Or is that just an accident or whatever?
Exactly.
And so it's like, you know, it's a slippery slope to go down.
Yeah, and not to cast judgment on anybody. However, I think that sometimes people with good intentions fall prey to a short-sighted feeling that I feel what I'm saying is right, so everybody else has got to see it from my point of view.
Yeah.
And they may not realize or stop to think, all right, let's say that we start making legal decisions about speech. Well, who's the chief executive of this country? Are you a big fan of Donald Trump? I don't think you are. Or do you want to give him the power to regulate hate speech? Well, that makes the most sense from a stand back point of view. Like like exactly what you said. Who's going to make these decisions? And then what if it swings against you? You know, that's
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, we're against fascism and blah blah blah, all this stuff. You're a fascist. It's like, well, you're kind of being a fascist with your own ideas. You just don't like it when people are using it against you,
Exactly.
but you'll use it for your own gain all you
Right.
want or whatever.
Right.
And so it's always that pendulum swinging. It's totally true. Like you said, it's, you know, people with short-sighted mentality. They're like, oh, well, this is good in the short term or whatever. And I think it's also an idea of wanting to please everybody too. It's like you can't really ever please everybody. Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah, I think it's not a great quote now. Bill Cosby, I think, said it, but he said, "I don't know the key to happiness, but I know that the key to I don't know the key to success, but the key to failure is trying to please everybody," or something like that. And it sounds terrible saying it now because you're like, "Whoa, shit, he definitely wasn't pleasing everybody, that's for sure."
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that it's not a true
doesn't mean it's not a true
statement.
statement or a good quote. But yeah, like it's definitely one of those things, like you said, with, you know, social engineering, because it can go down the route of, you know, political correctness, or it can go down the route of like Hitler type shit, where you're like, well, you know, we believe that this type of person is the best type of person to have around, so we need to get rid of the others.
Have you heard of the planet Nazi analogy?
No.
I think Jordan has talked about this.
Maybe I might be familiar with it, but I don't know
It's basically
exact analogy. Explain it. Yeah.
Thought experiments of taking things to the extreme. So let's take this to the extreme, and this comes back into a lot of this is understanding postmodern thought and how the notion of your truth and my truth, and how truth is actually relativistic, and how society is what really dictates things. So if you take that to the extreme view, the thought experiment goes, let's look at Nazis, one of the most disgusting ideologies out there. But societally in Germany at the time, it was widely accepted. So that society had dictated this is fine. So if you made Planet Nazi, where everybody on this one planet is a Nazi, and then you show up there, are you wrong or is Nazism wrong? And I think most people would agree the ideas behind what the Nazis did were wrong. They're wrong. It wasn't your truth versus my truth. It's not okay to systematically wipe out people just because.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's getting away from that idea of me pushing my truth or society dictates things, because society goes like this all the time. Its cultures fluctuate. And so it's whatever flavor of the month is going to dictate the laws that govern us can be, like you said earlier, such a slippery slope, because it just matters who gains the power. And now you're living your life in pursuit of power. And that's it, is just I'm pursuing power over other people. And that doesn't sound very fulfilling.
Yeah, I've never really, I think people don't necessarily pursue power in the way of like, ooh, I'm going to try to gain power over everyone else. They're consciously thinking that, but I think subconsciously,
I agree.
They're trying to, gain power over them by regulating what they can and can't say or whatever, things like that. Or, you shouldn't be allowed to call me that or whatever.
Yeah. And again, I think a lot of times it's because it's due to short-sightedness. They may, I'll grant goodwill on their part. They think, and they feel rather, that they're correct and that they're right and that it's good and that what I'm saying is good. It's better. So I've got to force this on you because you don't agree. And that is a form of power. Like, I need power to force goodness on these people. And I think it's, again, short-sighted, because once you turn everything into a power struggle, then
exactly.
It's just a fight all the time.
Yeah, that's you brought up the point about saying my truth versus your truth. I hear people say that a lot these days, like, yes, speak your truth or whatever.
Right.
I'm just speaking my truth or whatever. And I think it's, sometimes people are just saying it as like, I'm just sharing my opinions or my, whatever.
They're getting loose with language.
Yeah, but I think some people really do take it to that extreme of my truth. Like, I'm living my truth.
Sure.
And my truth, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
And it's like, well, the truth is the truth, like, my truth versus your truth. What if my truth says your truth is a lie? Whose truth is the truth,
People don't think that far ahead. That's
exactly
the thing. Like, when it's my truth and your truth, it makes it, the benefit of it is it makes it easier to accept other people and other people's ways of life. So if you come from a very, 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 very strict family who says, homosexuality is wrong. Well, if you turn that around to, well, that's your truth, Dad. So I don't have to argue with my family about what they think about homosexuals, but I can accept homosexuals because both things can be true, and then it's easier, and then I can get along with everybody. And I believe that does come from a good-natured point of view. But it gets dangerous. It gets dangerous. Like, it gets, when you water everything down to accepting shades of gray as how the world works, I think you miss out on some of the best parts of the world.
Yeah. For sure. And to what you're saying about, like, especially I'll use the homosexual example again, like, if you believe that homosexuality is a sin or something like that, because I grew up in a really religious household where my parents believed that as well. And I've kind of come to a realization that deep down, it's like, I don't really know what people are feeling, and I can't tell, I can't, for example, if like I hate to make the correlation, but if like a pedophile who's like really into kids, or whatever, but they never act on it, that, are they still considered that? Like, would you label them as that or whatever? It's kind of like that's how they equate the homosexuality thing. It's like, well, you might have those tendencies, but as long as you never act on it, it's not a sin or whatever.
Right.
And my thing is, like, as long as you're not harming anyone and there's always consent, that's the thing about the pedophile thing. It's like a child can't give consent and it's fucked up to do that. Right. But if it's two consenting adults that want to do whatever they want in the privacy of their own homes, who am I to like tell you what you can't do behind closed doors? Like I really shouldn't care what you're doing with your bodies behind closed doors, as long as no one's getting hurt, and as long as there's consent. I don't care.
More importantly, from a legal point of view, regardless of what, you know, I know a lot of people who are very, 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 very far on one end of. I mean, I'm not trying to pick on homosexuals.
No, it's just it's just kind of like
an
example that comes up a lot.
Right, yeah, and it's with making laws about it is totally different than believing it's right or wrong. Like I know people who say, I think it's a sin. I have friends who are gay. I like really good friends, but I do stuff that's wrong. I think that's wrong. I certainly don't think we should make legal things about that. Like it's none of my business what he does.
Like in the Bible, gluttony is a sin, like overeating and stuff. Like, should we make that
one of the
illegal?
7 deadly sins?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Exactly. So it's kind of like, you know, everyone fucks up. Everyone's got their own vice or whatever. If you think that that's a sin, then, you know, the Bible says like, if you you know, just, again, going back to religion, the Bible says like before you cast, you know, judgment on your friend, look at this, take the plank out of your own eye before you point out the speck in your brother's eye or whatever. It's the same kind of thing. So I think the idea of like governmental paternalism is pretty dangerous.
I agree.
Because, you know, I think it comes from a good place, but it also comes from a place of like gaining power and
it's too much power in certain people's hands.
Yeah. Very true.
So now you've got people who are in governing positions who are just people making decisions about what you do in the bedroom. And so in this case, you know,
and with like abortion and stuff too.
Yeah. I mean, there's like, man, and some of these arguments are so. It's tough because you've got one group saying one thing and the other group is saying another thing, and neither group is hearing what the other ones say. So these people say something, and these people say something. And these people hear what they want to hear, and then they argue about that. And these people hear what they want to hear, and they argue about that. And nobody's talking about, there's no discussion, there's no dialogue. It's just a bunch of confusion and nonsense, and people getting mad about, it's like a bunch of straw men set up, and everybody's arguing with straw men, and it's...
Yeah. And I think the vast majority of people do live in the middle, like they're that silent majority, you know, because the people on the ends of the spectrum tend to be the most vocal, you know, because they have the strongest beliefs.
Right.
And I think most people out there are kind of like, dude, I don't really like abortion, but I mean, sometimes it's got to be the option, you know, or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
But that's not
they don't want to argue about it. Like, I don't want to fight about this. Like,
or they're like, I'm a dude, like I don't feel like I have a rat in this race or whatever. Like I don't a rat in this race. Is that the saying? I don't have a horse in this race.
Yeah.
I don't have a rat in this rat race.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's kind of like, dude, I don't know what I believe. So like, you know, but it is an interesting thing where I do think most people do kind of fall in the middle in that gray area.
Yeah.
But maybe that's up to personal interpretation.
Nobody's talking about it. Everybody just screams platitudes that don't seem to apply to the other side, and then the other side's like, oh gosh, that's not me. So it's just.
Yeah, and it's all like a case-by-case basis, you know, especially with the abortion debate. People are talking about like, so if your daughter gets raped or whatever, she can't have that abortion. Like that's a really good example, but it's a terrible thing to have happen.
Of course.
And you know that does happen. And then on the other side, it's like, well, you know, are we just gonna let it happen? Like, you know, 7 months in or whatever, that's a baby. You could cut them open and the baby could be viable outside the womb. It's kind of that gray area where it's somewhere in the middle is that answer, and it's always messy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, I don't remember how we got onto that subject. Yeah, it was a good discussion though.
Well, no, it's current. It's current, and it's something that it's hard to not think about it.
Yeah.
And even when nobody's talking about it, it's still on people's minds because, I mean, that's the other thing about social media is. That's interesting because, you know, for example, on my Instagram feed, I've got a lot of good friends, and you know, I'll disagree with them politically, and I've come to realize, man, if they find out that I disagree with them, they probably won't be friends with me. Like, and that's a fascinating thing is, so whether or not you know I disagree with you on this issue doesn't change our relationship. But if you find out I disagree with you, then the relationship changed. All that's changed is you now have the knowledge of reality. The reality hasn't changed, only now you know about that reality.
Yeah.
And some people can't handle that on both sides of any issue. I'm not trying to pick on either side.
Yeah.
And you'll see people screaming and screaming and screaming and just going ballistic and like emotions running high, and just like, gosh, I'm gonna wait till they calm down before I talk to them, because my God, if they find out that I think one little thing, they're gonna freak out, and it's just not worth it. Like I care more about my relationships with people than letting them know what I think about something that's not a direct part of my life.
Yeah, for sure. That happens a lot with me. I go to a lot of like music festivals and stuff, and I'll meet people there, and we'll add each other on social media, and then again, it's like we were chumming it up, hanging out all the time at the music festival. Politics or whatever never came up.
Yeah.
And then you start following, and then you realize they're like, very extreme
Very
beliefs
something.
or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa. It's kind of crazy. Like, I hope they don't ever ask me about this, because we might not be friends after or whatever.
Yeah.
I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
And I think also for people out there listening, if you are that type of person that is really harsh and in your face and stuff, I can appreciate that sometimes on Facebook, because some people do need like a wake up call.
And I believe it comes from a good place.
Totally.
I think it comes from positive, like a genuine goodness.
Yeah, because sometimes people do need that wake up call. Sometimes people do need a slap in the face as far as waking up to a certain different idea or whatever. But I think, that maybe sometimes social media is not the place to get on your soapbox and yell like that. I think real change happens in like conversations like this, where you're able to say your piece and I can say my piece, because face to face, that's why I wanted to do this podcast. I do every episode face to face. I never do like Skype or anything like that, because I think there is like some kind of primal thing when you're face to face, because like there's that fight or flight sort of, like if we get into like an altercation, I don't want to fight you, you don't want to fight me.
You got to be civilized.
Yeah, you got to be civilized, because if I say something
Right.
wrong, you might get heated and punch me in the face or something. I don't want that. But on the computer, you can
Social
just be
media armor.
Yeah, you can be a keyboard warrior, and you can say whatever you want, and maybe we'll run into each other in real life, whatever. But there is some sort of weird disconnection that happens, and I think it's hard sometimes to change someone's mind when it's already like made up like that.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I always ask people, like, how often has a Facebook post changed your belief system? It's never changed mine.
Yeah, pretty much never. It only happens when it's a soft kind of like maybe like, for example, I have some friends on my Facebook that I've known since like childhood, or I've known over the years, and they've come out as trans or whatever. And I never knew anyone that was trans growing up. I didn't even really know what it was really until like kind of recent years. I knew that it was like a thing, but
it's a very new.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always been that. It's always been there, but it's like a new phenomenon as far as.
Yeah, as far as society accepting
now,
it and whatever. And now there's, I think, celebrities, there's trans celebrities, and so it kind of normalizes it or whatever. And some of those posts that I've seen have kind of opened my eyes a little bit, because they'll say stuff where I'm like, yeah, I guess, that is kind of rude to say it like that or whatever. I guess I never thought about it like that. Or, for example, our friend Richard, who's in a wheelchair, like, he'll say some stuff. I'm like, wow. Yeah, I guess, I never thought about it like that. Calling someone disabled is not a very good word to use. It's like, I'm a wheelchair user rather than like I'm a cripple or something. Like, same thing, with all kinds of stuff. But it also kind of becomes so now that I'm a wheelchair user, now you're putting that label on me, and now in 6 months I'm gonna want you to call me differently abled or something.
Right.
It's like you gotta kind of like settle on something, kind of like the R word. People can't even say retard anymore. Like but
yeah, I mean, I come from a generation where that was like. Do you know how hard it was to stop not say that word anymore?
Yeah.
And I've never said that about anybody with Down syndrome in my life.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's like, that guy's retarded. You'd be like, hey. No,
what
that's
the
not.
fuck?
You don't use that word about him. That's
Yeah.
like, and then you'd call that person.
Yeah. The original root of the word retard is to slow down, right? Like, there's like flame retardant.
Well,
whatever.
I believe that originally people with Down syndrome were called mongoloids, if I'm not mistaken.
Like a mongoloid retard.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And then retarded was a more acceptable. That was a softer version of it. So it like retarded was on the upward slope getting better and better to what we call it now. So,
Yeah.
And then they call them mentally handicapped or mentally disabled.
Yeah, kind of like, it's like they're not black, they're African American.
Right.
And then it was like, well, now you're calling everyone African American and I'm from Jamaica or whatever. I'm not African at all.
Right.
So then it was like we go back to black or now it's people of color or whatever. It's like there's always a new flavor of the month as far as labels and what people want to be called. And I think as someone who has a label or whatever you want to call it, I think being reactive to people, because like you said, most people have good intentions. They're not trying to be racist, they're not trying to be hurtful or whatever. They're probably just uneducated.
Sure.
And so if they call you by the wrong thing or whatever, don't freak out on them. You just gotta be like, well, he just doesn't know. You gotta educate him or whatever.
Or some people have really thick skin.
Yeah.
It's impossible to offend me. I don't care. Like, people call me out for whatever it may be, and I honestly think it's funny.
Yeah.
And the danger of that is, I definitely can't apply that mentality on other people, because other people have sensitivities that I don't have, and those are just as real as my lack of that sensitivity. So I've got to be careful. I think one of the biggest problems is the not application of intention, the projection of intention. Like, I'm going to assume your intentions for you. So I'm assuming your bad intentions. Like, your default thing is you're probably bad intentioned when you're saying that. So I'm going to react to that. And that's something I think is unfair and unacceptable. Like, and I honestly think it leads people to be more miserable. If you think that everybody's a villain on some level, if everybody is some kind of ist about something, like, man, it's got to be hard to live that way. It's like always being suspicious.
Smash the patriarchy, all men are pigs or whatever.
Whatever it may be. Like, everybody is against me or against somebody for some reason, rather than the other view of giving people the benefit of the doubt and realizing they're going to let you down, and then remembering, hey, all the times I've let people down, I've failed my own standards for how I want to be, and if I can't even hold true to my own standards because I'm not perfect, how can I expect other people to do the same? And so just let things slide.
Yeah, man.
I don't agree with what you just said, but hey, like, whatever. And sometimes you need to say something when it's like, hey, dude, like, there's kids in the room, like, let's just settle down a little bit, but don't treat them like they just killed an entire people group or something. Because
it's true, man.
People go to 0 to 11 immediately.
Yeah, it's like when you call someone racist for like accidentally saying something a weird way or whatever, it's like you're like lessening the blow of that word for actual fucking racists.
I fully agree with this. And that's something, gosh, that is another, I actually got drawn into a debate, which I hate doing, but it was, people assume you're saying there's no such thing as racism, and it's like, no. Like, exactly what you're saying, I think is correct, is if you water down racism as a word, then it makes real racism, it lessens what's such a horrible thing. And I think racism is one of the most, I think it's so bad that it's almost comical. It is a ridiculous viewpoint of the world. It's a ridiculous viewpoint of the world that somehow things that are totally beyond your control, the condition of your birth, like my skin is this, makes me less or better or changes my value in any way. It's comical. It's ridiculous in nature, but it's incredibly destructive historically. And if you start to cast all kinds of lesser things as racism, you're making those other things, like, the danger is nobody's gonna take it seriously anymore. And people are gonna forget how bad it really was. And
Totally.
I don't ever want to see that happen.
I think it's happening right now with the word of like sexual assault. Cause like, it's like a guy groped me in a nightclub. Yeah, it's kind of like sexual assault, but like, when rape is also classified as sexual assault, it's like you're like, maybe we need to come up with different words, or like, some guy catcalled me. Is that sexual assault, or is that just a guy trying to flirt with you in a bad?
I know a lot of Italian
way?
dudes in New York who are catcalling is like gentlemanly.
Yeah.
And like a lot of women respond to that positively. It's like,
true.
you don't like it, it's not your way of life, but they're down with it.
Yeah, and a lot of like Latin countries and stuff. Like I know some girls that like love going to Mexico and stuff because they love it's like a confidence booster. They're getting hit on 24/7.
There are some aggressive women out there. This is true. People are different. This goes back to give some of the benefit of the doubt.
Totally. Yeah, and obviously there's a lot of, especially with like catcalling. I think a lot of times it's almost for the other guys that you're with to like impress them, like, hey, look at that broad over there, or whatever.
The bro mentality.
Yeah, and it's also like there's like this weird like barrier between you and the person that you're almost too scared to actually walk up to them and pay them a real compliment. And it's like, how often has catcalling ever even worked?
Right.
Like almost, I can't imagine a time where it's like ever worked.
What's funny is the times when you see a very intelligent, witty, and confident woman engage with a catcaller, like go up to them, approach them, and then like engage with them, like break down the catcall, and the guy's just like, I don't know what to do. Like now this woman, like the barrier is gone. Like this is in my face. I've got to actually engage with this woman, and can I impress her? Have I lost all? Like they're gone. They're done.
Yeah.
They're smoked. And like women have so much power that they don't realize. Like women are so unbelievably powerful in just being a woman. Like men try to hide behind all that bullshit, but like when you have a witty, intelligent woman like engage in that way, like go and not try to call them out, but just like dudes can't handle it.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like in The Dark Knight, he's like, I'm like a dog chasing the mailman. I wouldn't even know what to do with him if I caught him.
Yeah, right.
It's
exactly.
Like, he's just doing it to do it.
Right. So you catcall that woman. Oh, now here she is.
Yeah.
You're gonna follow? What's your?
You didn't follow that thought experiment all the way to the end.
Right.
Yeah.
You opened. Let's see how you can you close this? And they can't because it's just nonsense.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, but yeah, it's again good to go back to the blurring of those lines. It's like, what do we call that? Obviously it's unacceptable, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like to be a woman and have people do that to me all the time, and I'm sure I wouldn't appreciate it, and I don't do that. But at the end of the day, it's like, you're kind of lessening the blow of real hardcore victims and stuff. And
it's kind of what happened with Aziz Ansari.
Yeah.
I don't know what really happened, so I don't want to make decisions.
It was something with his girlfriend made allegations or something, right?
It was like a date. It sounded just like a really bad date or couple of dates, or like a really bad hookup situation.
Yeah.
And there was probably remorse about what happened, but there was nothing it didn't seem like there was anything non-consensual or nothing that was forced, and it was like, okay, maybe there's some issues that we can get into, but like to say that's the same as when
Harvey Weinstein or something,
right?
Yeah.
Or God forbid, like someone breaking in and forcibly attacking a woman, like that's like, what is that? That just diminishes the thing that's, I'm not saying one thing is less, but you can't.
Yeah, exactly.
By not equating them, I'm not saying this isn't bad. I'm just saying there's nuance.
In the law, it's like, they've got different levels of murder, right? Like there's sometimes like murder's an accident, and like, the intention matters. And that's where I think a lot of people just want to say, put a hard line and like, no, the intent doesn't matter if you're doing this in any kind of way.
Right.
You're just as bad as this or whatever.
Right.
And that's just like...
Well, nuance is disappearing, and that's what that's the problem is there's no... Like it's tough.
Definitely.
So to segue back, a lot of my views on this were like traveling and meeting other cultures is where I have learned so much about these things, and seeing how other people think, and seeing that people are people everywhere, regardless of culture, religion, whatever it may be. Like people are people, and that's really opened my eyes a lot about a lot of things that we're talking about now.
I would agree. And I think the reason why certain, like racism, like real racism exists is just because it's almost kind of like being afraid of what you don't know. It's like, here's these people encroaching on what I believe, my whole belief system, That's what I love about traveling as well, is it kind of like challenges what normal is. Like you go and eat at a restaurant and everyone's doing things a quote unquote weird way. And then you're like, well, kind of like what you're saying with the Planet Nazi example. It's like, well, who's wrong here?
Right.
It's like, well, no one's wrong. this is just what, and there may be a reason
well,
for it.
Planet
Nazi,
Nazi, the Nazis are wrong.
Yeah, they are. But
Like use the Georgia Tech analogy, where like all the tech nerds are, like they're tech nerds, but that's the norm there. I'm the one who's odd because I'm not.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a different nerd.
Yeah, exactly. And there are some cultures where you go there and you're like, oh wow, even though this is normalized, this is still fucked up and wrong.
Yeah.
But you go to a lot of European countries, for example. Things are relatively the same, but there's some weird things, quote unquote weird things that are not weird to them, and then you're like, well, you're the weird one now, and you're like, whoa, this is strange, and you start to question and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So where did you all go in the beginning? What countries were you going to?
So I went to Europe twice. That was like the first places I went. I went to France. Again, the cool thing is like it was such a small community. This is like, man, this is right at the beginning of Facebook and stuff. But we had like forums like Stunt Ride and Stunt Life and all these things where like all the riders in the world would come on these forums. They're American forums, but they didn't have forums in Europe, so you'd have like the Frenchies. I know French people, Polish people, they learned English from stunt riding forums.
That's cool.
And hip hop music. So
they might have picked up a few bad ones.
Oh yeah.
A few bad words.
Yeah. I've taught so many kids correct ways to swear in English. You're like, no, you're mixing just flip those. Yeah, that's really bad. Good. Nailed it.
You're like, whoa, don't say that in America.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but so like every time I would travel, it was always with people. Like I would fly into Paris to this guy Bruno's house, and then we'd all get in, like a bunch of riders would meet there from like Finland and Spain and France and Great Britain and Ireland, and then we'd all road trip to Switzerland for that comp. And then after, we would road trip down like through Italy into Spain and the French Riviera, and we'd just stop and we'd stay with other riders. And there was never, like, I never saw anything touristy unless it was where we're like, yo, hey, dude, we've got to go to the Louvre because it's the freaking Louvre. Like, we got to go see this.
Yeah.
But it was just hanging out.
Or like the Eiffel Tower. It's like you got to see the Eiffel Tower.
Right. Which, and again, seeing some of these historical things with other locals was hilarious, because a lot of times you'd realize how much they didn't care.
Yeah.
They'd be like, I've never seen this crap before. Like, I've never been to Notre Dame. I was like, you're from Paris, dude. How have you never seen this? They're like, oh, I didn't know that. And they're like, aren't you from here?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, I just didn't know that. And I was like, all right, so Americans aren't so stupid and isolated. Everybody just tends to mind their own business and not worry about the things that are,
Yeah.
So that's always funny. And like we'd be traveling, the French dudes, like, you know how much French people think their food is like, it's the shit. It's the best thing ever. All the Frenchies would eat was from McDonald's. Everywhere. Freaking McDonald's. And we were like, dude, we just came from McDonald's Central. We don't want this crap. Let's go eat some local food. Hey, McDonald's. But
it's so true.
Yeah, but I mean, like, that's always the best. And then after Europe...
What did you think of Paris, by the way? Overrated?
Yeah,
that's my first word, man. Like, I feel like it's so romanticized and blah blah blah. But like when you're there, it's kind of like, it's a city. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. There's all the history.
Old. Everything is. There's so much time. It was impressive how much
the river is great.
Into everything, and like Notre Dame was spectacular. Was spectacular. I was genuinely upset when it burned down. It was an amazing. I mean, people lived their life building that place.
Yeah.
The people who started it died before it was finished. And I mean, like, that's the dedication to
old cathedrals are crazy.
It's incredible, yeah. So that's cool. But then just, I mean, Parisians are, all right, grain of salt, giant grain of salt. I love the French people. I love the French culture. I really do.
And you have a lot of French friends.
I have a lot of French friends who I still hang out with. And they will even admit that their Frenchiness is extra Frenchy. Like, this is the beautiful part. Like, people think that this is not a slam. This is it's an acceptance of a reality, and it's what makes the world beautiful. Because if the French weren't so French, then we wouldn't realize how Spanish the Spanish are and how American the Americans are, because the French are being so French over here. And you know what I mean? Like, you have all
That's a good way of looking at it, man.
Like, you've got color, you've got perspective in the world, you've got depth because of all these different things. Like, they refuse to be anything other than French. In Paris, if you don't speak French like we speak French in Paris, you are a piece of trash. If you speak Canadian French, we're not going to talk to you. And that's like, that perspective is just like, okay, that's pretty serious, but like they would prefer.
You see that here though, you see like a guy. Well, if they can't speak English, then they need to go back.
Right, and it's like, bro, you can't speak English, man. And not every Parisian is like that. These are gross.
Grain of salt.
These are
Grain of salt.
gross exaggerations, but
Yeah.
they make, like, if you just chill and relax and have a good sense of humor about it and accept your own shit, it makes things so much fun, because then you can sometimes, like, the French would be extra French just to piss me off, and so I would be really American to piss them off, and it's just fun because you would be the stereotype of what they thought just to make them laugh, and like, that's fun. Like, we're not the same, and that's what makes them interesting, and that's what makes me interesting.
Did they always think it was funny that you're from the South and you didn't have an accent?
They can't. So here's another thing. The Southern accent is oftentimes imperceptible to foreigners.
Really?
They can't hear it. Furthermore, a lot of Southerners are really easy to understand because the Southern accent, it's a drawl. Y'all tend to speak slower and enunciate in such a way that seems stupid and ridiculous, but you're talking so slow people could clearly understand it.
It's true.
And that, like, I got blown away by that. One time we were at the practice spot, and I had a bunch of, my house was like a European hostel. So like, I was one of the first people to travel. And so I would be like, this is amazing. I was like, everybody come to the US. So I'd have like 5 Frenchies at one time come, and Spanish people would come, and one of my buddies from Japan came. He like learned English from me, and a French rider. So they would come, and like rednecks would show up when we'd ride. And they would start talking, and I'd be like, no way they understood that. And I was like, yo, did you understand anything he said? They'd be like, oh yeah, his English is very good. And I was like, what?
That's awesome.
Really? Yeah. And then
his English is perfect.
Yeah, and then they would hear accents. They'd be like, his accent was weird. I was like, he didn't have an accent. So like, what they would hear as like styles of talking, they would think was an accent, and that's
definitely.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I know. Some people, I've gone to like some music festivals in like Europe and stuff, and a lot of times people have a hard time understanding the Australian accent because it's so like stylized, and they have so many weird words that like no one in the rest of the world uses for anything. Right. So it's like, what?
Right.
And you're like, what? And it's like, what you going on all about? And you're like, come again? I still don't know.
And a lot of it is they're using slang.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, that was a slang word and the accent. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, you're like, what? Yeah. I love Australians because like I think also because I'm pretty good at impersonating accents, I can understand accents a little bit better. So like if you start to, like your brain is thinking like, how do I make this accent? You can kind of reverse engineer what they're saying a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, like my dad, for example, really bad at accents, also terrible at understanding what other people are saying in an accent.
Sure.
So I think it's maybe like the same part of the brain too, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But anyways, so you kind of just started riding and all this stuff, and you had all these friends in the community.
Yeah. So then it turned into,
and you said you had a part-time job at the time too. Or like when did it kind of become more of like your actual full-time thing?
So when I dropped out of school and I was riding, I was traveling a lot. I had a job in a machine shop. One of my best friends' father opened up a machine shop making metal roofing. And so I was there from the beginning, like setting up the machines and operating the machines and just doing that kind of stuff. And he was really cool. He was family friend, so I could always just come and go as I needed to.
Nice.
And then after that, I got a photography job in real estate. This is like 2008. And then the whole recession hit and housing crisis and all that nonsense. So I lost that job. And when I lost that job, I was like, all right, screw it. Let's just go for this full time. So I went into like super just live well below my means mode, save my pennies, just live a certain lifestyle, only put money into riding and, and travel, because the travel was always paid for. So a lot of it was, I would travel, like I would be out of the country half the year and it was paid for. And so I'm having all these experiences.
What were you doing as far as living back home? Were you like crashing at your parents, or were you like, did you have a spot and you like,
Yeah, my dad, like me and my dad have a house, and
nice.
Like it's way too much for 2 guys. So like I was very fortunate that I get along.
That's a good situation.
I get along really well with my father, and so he and I have always just kind of been a squad. And
nice.
That's just kind of how it goes,
Was he into like tinkering with like any car stuff or motorcycle stuff at all?
No.
Where do you think you got that from?
It is in my. I mean, it kind of is in my in my genes. Like one of my uncles is a really good mechanic, engineer, that kind of thing. My father could fix stuff. Like he always fixed his own cars, that kind of thing. I got into fixing things when I was 16 because I had a job since I was 15 years old.
Did you guys have like a garage with like a bunch of tools and stuff like that? Like where if you wanted to, you could kind of mess around?
We just had enough tools to fix things. Yeah. And I would just slowly, like, I collected my tools I would break something and, well, I got to buy this tool to fix this. And then I always had crappy cars because I had to buy my cars, and I worked at a video store, and, like, this is what I can afford. And
a video store. Remember that, kids? Video stores?
Yeah, VHS store, DVD store. Exactly. I just dated myself pretty hardcore.
No, I mean, it was the best. You go to Blockbuster, pick out your movies and all that. Yeah. It's funny that
that's like a cultural thing that doesn't exist anymore.
It's pretty crazy. I remember Gary Vaynerchuk talking about, like, in the early days, Blockbuster was in position to potentially buy out Netflix. Yeah. And they declined because they did their market research, and they said that they were confident in the experience of going to Blockbuster outweighed this idea of getting movies shipped to you, because that's all Netflix was at the time, was mail delivery. Right. And Blockbuster had that also. And so they're like, well, we don't need to buy them. We're just going to beat them out in the long run anyways. Right. So we don't, thanks but no thanks, we'll pass. Right. And obviously that was the downfall of Blockbuster. But it's funny because, obviously, market, you can't just do market research in the present, because you got to predict how people are going to act in the next few years.
But who could have ever predicted Netflix and chill?
That's so true. That is very true.
That is an experience that is unrivaled by Blockbuster.
Definitely. Because also even like, and also Redbox. Like Redbox is a thing. I mean, most people don't even have like DVD players that much anymore anyways. No, but even if you do, like, you can just go to that machine and they've got the 10 movies that you probably want anyways. And if it's something obscure, you can find it on YouTube or whatever. Yeah. So it's like, Well,
I mean, even now people are cutting the cord of their cable company.
It's true.
I don't have cable.
Me neither. Yeah, we actually just moved into a new place with a couple other guys, and like we got really good internet. Yeah. We like bought the fastest internet package we could. Right. But we didn't get the cable part, because like, what are we gonna? We've got like HBO if we need it. We got Netflix if we need it. Like, if there's a sporting event that anyone really cares about, I'm sure we can go somewhere or watch it at a sports bar, or like go to a friend's house or whatever. Right. The
things you can't stream, you find you don't miss at all. Like, there's so much, you don't need to see everything.
And personally, I'm a big YouTube guy. I watch most of my stuff on YouTube. Right. I have a lot of creators that I watch on there, so I don't even really Netflix that much or whatever. Right. Like, I'm, and my dad, thinks that's like so strange and foreign. Like, well, what are you gonna do? You're not gonna get cable? What are you gonna watch? It's like, I don't watch anything on cable. Yeah.
Well, there's not. I mean, I don't even know what's on TV. I can't tell you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of reality stuff. I mean, sports stuff kind of makes sense, but
it does. Yeah.
But I think the sports thing, they're gonna probably ESPN or someone will come up with some sort of streaming sports thing that kind of encompasses everything, and like UFC has their like Fight Pass or whatever, and all that kind of stuff. So it's like whatever. I think everything is just kind of niching down, and whatever you're into, you pay for, and whatever Yeah. Because that was the thing with cable. It's like, I don't need 500 channels. Right. I don't need that. I watch like 10 things. How do I pay for those 10 things?
Right,
but
exactly.
People are getting that like subscription fatigue now, where they're like, I've got a subscription for too many things. I got to like start cutting things out or like whatever. But anyways, that's a whole other thing. But you were working at the video shop and pinching pennies and all that, trying to live.
Well, that was before motorcycles.
Oh yeah. That was before motorcycles.
I had the photography job, and that fell south because of the market, and then I just started riding full time. And then I started
what did that look like? Like, how were you actually making money? Through competitions, through sponsors?
So this is, now we're into the realm of where no two paths look the same. Everybody's way of monetizing things are all vastly different.
Kind of like Steele with like the drone stuff. It's like,
Steele's the friggin' master at it.
Yeah.
He's got the whole multiple revenue streams down.
Totally.
But when I was doing this was 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that right? 2012. I have a horrible memory with time.
I'm bad with dates and years and stuff
maybe
too,
2010, man. It was wild. It was like 9 years ago.
It's easy when you're in the school years, because you can remember what grade you were in and stuff. Especially for like I remember, I could always remember because I'm younger. My graduation year or the grade, it was weird. The year of school I was in correlated with the year of the millennium. So when I was in 5th grade, it ended in 2005.
Oh, that's easy.
And 8th grade was 8. So I can kind of gauge that, but then anything after that, I'm like, was it 2015, 2016? I can't remember, you know?
Yeah, I don't remember at all.
Yeah, exactly.
And things change so much that it just kind of blurs into,
Yeah, you know it'd be the easiest if you were born in the year 2000.
Yeah.
Like you always know exactly like everything about your,
Right.
But anyways, that's just kind of a cool year.
Yeah.
But you said you couldn't really remember what years, but you were starting to do this full time. How are you actually making money?
So this was before there was, I mean, this is when Facebook was just nascent. There's no such thing as, I don't even know when YouTube came out, but I mean, there was no,
It wasn't the same YouTube
there was
of
nothing,
today.
like not even close.
And if there was
Like,
a
just,
YouTube,
like-
there was no partner program where you could make money, really.
Right. I mean, I look back and think of like, my God, the travel show that I could have had would have been ridiculous. Like the amount of ridiculous things that have happened traveling abroad, and like the things I've seen, and the people I've met, and the perspectives that I have because of things are like, you can't buy it. There's no tourist package that even gets close. That being said, like the way to monetize is one, through sponsors, but that's really tough because there's, in the motorsports world, especially because it's just an American market, it's not a global market. It's I mean, it is and it isn't, but like there's Kawasaki America, and they have their own team, their own budget, their own thing. So you go through them for whatever it may be. Well, they've already got one rider; they're not looking for anybody else. So it's really it's a very, very small pool of money. And I had some sponsors; they would give me free gear. They give me like a yearly salary that was like a little bit. So you've got that in a couple places from different sponsors. And then basically making money through, if I would win comps, I would get some money here and there. So I was competing yearly. And at the time in the US, we had an amazing, probably the best competition series in the world at the time. It's no longer around, but it's the standard for any comp that happens now. Every comp anywhere in the world will use some variation of this competition. It was called XDL. So making some money there, and then traveling, doing shows. So I had built a name at the time of being, as far as skills, very good, and then being someone you could work with. Like, that's another thing, is not being a dick goes so far in an industry where everybody's some kind of punk ass. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it's like people want that image without getting everything that comes behind it. So I would get invited back to events, and sometimes it'd be like, yeah, look, everybody else is such a pain in the ass. You're an amazing rider, and you're not a jerk. Like, it's easy for us to bring you. So that kind of thing goes a long way.
Yeah.
And so I would get, a show here, a show there. Shows are usually like, it may be a local dealership wants to have an event day to draw in a big crowd, so they would hire a stunt rider to come in, do like some performances and draw people in. Or it may be there's a AMA race, when AMA was a thing at the time. They're Moto American now, but when AMA would have a race, they would have like their vendor village, and then they would also have like events, like they may have some motocross guys, and they would have us as stunt riders to be, it's some kind of extra form of entertainment. And so I would do that and travel. And then
Did you ever feel like a circus performer at all? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, to a degree, yeah.
Yeah, because I think I actually had a girl on my podcast a while ago who she's in the circus industry, and I never really knew how it worked, because like she doesn't necessarily like tour with a like Ringling Brothers blah blah blah.
Oh,
but
she's like freelance?
Yeah, kind of like freelancer. Someone will need a silks person for their event or whatever, or someone will need a whatever, or for their, and a lot of them try to do like the Cirque du Soleil thing or similar kind of shows, whatever.
Yeah.
But it was kind of interesting because I'm not familiar with the circus industry per se, but I feel like that's kind of a little bit similar. You're kind of just getting booked out for random little gigs as like a performance.
That's it, totally.
Yeah.
You're your own subcontractor. So, and then as you do that, you develop skills, whether they be good skills or bad skills, but skills as a manager, as a logistics person, as a marketer, all those things. Is like, I was a one-man show. It's like, I'm trying to book, I had to start my own LLC, learn about that kind of thing, learn about doing my own taxes, 1099s, and then booking as far as doing contracts, getting screwed by promoters, how to handle that, how to plan ahead for injury, marketing, how to get my name out there, how to brand yourself, which I admit I probably wasn't great at that. There wasn't a lot of information at the time.
Yeah.
Like you can find out more now, which is great. Some of the guys who are new now have done amazing at branding themselves. But that's something that I had to do. So you start putting all these different hats on, and you learn these skills. Otherwise, you don't work, or you don't get to do the job.
What were some weird little hacks that you figured out? Like if you anything kind of strange that you did to get your name out there, like some kind of weird hacks. Like I remember one thing I would do is like when I was first starting the podcast is like, when I had a guest on, I'd go into like their Instagram and like go see who liked all their pictures and go like some of their pictures, and they're like, oh, who's this guy? Oh, we just had my friend on the podcast. It was a weird little hack of like getting discovered without like
breaking the ice.
Yeah, or whatever. Did you have any like weird things like that back in the day that were kind of like little tricks you figured out?
No, because again, like at that time, like there was no marketing through social media. Like that didn't exist. You didn't make any contacts that way. Most of the stuff
were you like cold calling, or like how'd you get your name out there?
A lot of emails. Like a lot of it was just like going and finding all these rallies, all these events, and just sending them an email. Say, here, this is who I am. This is what I've done. Here's if you want a little link to my resume as far as like who I am, what I do, and then like a promotional video or whatever. And and then a lot of it was word of mouth, where it was people need an event. Like for example, the first time I ever got to go into Southeast Asia was to Indonesia, and this is a long time ago, and that was basically stunt riding is pretty big in Indonesia, of all places you would think. And they've got some nasty riders over there. Nobody knew that. Most people don't know that now. But it's big there, so they wanted to throw these big international, like an event where they bring in an international rider. Well, how do we find an international rider? We'll ask some of our local riders. So who are these local riders watching? They're watching people like me and so-and-so and so-and-so. Or a lot of these guys like I would talk to, like there's this kid, Reza. He's an Indonesian rider who speaks really good English, and he's a great rider. Well, he would talk to me online and be like, hey, how are you doing this trick? And be like, oh, try this. And it's like, oh, it's so cool. Like, let me see your practice spot. And he's like, oh, here, this is my bike. Just like making those connections. Well, he was one of the best riders in Indonesia. He's connected. So they would say, hey, we need an international rider. We're like, yeah, bring Aaron Twite. And then they check me out and be like, oh yeah, he's blah, blah, blah. He's won all these competitions or whatever it may be. So then you go over there and then you meet, it was networking through literally meeting people at the time, which was, I mean, that's how you did it,
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the only way you could do it back in the day.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So when you were like flying out to these international places, I'm sure I've seen on your Instagram, certain things about flying your bike and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have all kinds of stories of customs and weird shit of flying bikes.
A lot of it is...
What's the deal with that?
So I almost never use my own bike overseas. The Switzerland thing was rare because they had a giant nasty budget, because it's like $5,000 to ship a bike internationally by air freight. And that's like going through US customs and then shipping and then having it shipped back. I did a show in Malaysia for a Formula One event for Petronas, which was freaking rad. That was a rad event that opened up so many things. So we did, how did this work? This is another thing where I had done, so here's how the marketing chain of events happens with this. I competed at XDL, and I was one of like the top 10 riders consistently. It was part of the family. Like we knew the owner, like we were a squad, like we were really close knit group of competitors, whatever. So Super Street Bike Magazine, which is a motorcycle magazine, was going to work with Ducati USA to do a 5 video series to promote the new Ducati Hyper Motard. So they wanted 2 stunt riders to do a promotional video on these Ducatis. So they went to the owner of XDL and said, hey, we need 2 of your best guys. So he picks me and this other guy, Luke Duke. We go to California, we do these things. It's actually a really funny, YouTube it, Ducati Game of Hype. It's worth the outtakes with me and this guy, Luke Duke. It's ridiculous.
Are the outtakes like funny stuff, or is it like crashes or what?
No, it's funny because he's from Connecticut and his accent is the most New England accent ever. And it's all just dry sarcasm, and the film crew didn't get any of it. So it's just like this weird tension of the film crew I think they're expecting like bike night bros, and he and I are not that at all. We're just like two dorks coming up with stupid jokes the whole time, and they didn't get it. Like the film crew just didn't get it at all. And the outtakes, just he and I just making an uncomfortable situation more and more awkward, and just diving into uncomfortable things with just jokes that they weren't going to get and nobody would get. So maybe if you watch it, you can think it's stupid, but it is stupid, so watch it.
I'm a fan of like anti-humor sometimes anyway, so even if I don't think it's funny, I'll probably think it's funny anyways.
But the riding is a lot of fun. Like they gave us 2 stock Ducati Hypermotards and like, let's do this, and it's cool because they're super fun bikes, and it was just like, it's a lot of fun.
How is it? I'm not a big, I've only ridden like dirt bikes before, and they've never been my own, so I don't know what it's like to have the feel of my own bike, but like I've had some cool, some fun cars in the past, and I know what it's like, driving my own car versus driving someone else's car or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you feel when you're driving someone else's bike versus your own? Like, do you feel like if you're, like you said at that thing in Malaysia,
it's super different.
Yeah, is it? Do you feel like you're less ballsy to try certain things? Or?
So I'll transition into that out of this. So anyways, try to make a long story short. I'm bad about that.
It's all good, dude.
So anyways, we do this job for Cycle World. Well, Cycle World has an affiliate in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, and they want to do, so Formula One has an event every year. They've got a race. They've got a Formula One race. Their team's Petronas team, and it's actually one of the top teams.
Yeah.
So they have a huge pre-party downtown Kuala Lumpur, like under the Twin Towers. There's those Twin Towers. Remember in that movie Entanglement where Catherine Zeta-Jones and Sean Connery are like going across that? It's those buildings.
The bridge, really high up.
It's those buildings. It's below those buildings on the street. They have this huge event with like Indy cars, and it's super sick. So they want Motorcycle Stuntrider. So they go to these guys in Malaysia who are the magazine affiliates. They contact the U.S. and the U.S. guys are like, yeah, we got this guy who just did this Ducati thing. So this huge chain comes to me. They're like, hey, we need you to come out here. We need you to ship your bike. So it's the people from Formula One Petronas had this massive budget to ship my bike out there. So I take one of my extra bikes and I ship it to Kuala Lumpur. So that's how that bike got out there. That being said, that bike is still out there. The bike is now an illegal alien in Malaysia. It's been there for years.
Wow.
I've smuggled that bike in and out of Singapore and all over to other events because like it's kind of Wild West.
Getting it back, you couldn't do it, or what was the situation?
I didn't want, I kept booking, after that I made contact, I kept booking so many shows in Southeast Asia. That bike was my Southeast Asia bike. But I could only use it in Malaysia and Singapore, but I had so many events there that it was fine. Like it just stayed out there.
That's hilarious.
Right, so that bike got out there that way. But like other places, 9 times out of 10, I'm riding a different bike.
Yeah.
And it's not the same at all.
I'm sure.
It's like playing basketball in someone else's shoes who don't fit you, and you're wearing the left shoe on the right foot, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you've got people who are like, all right, do what you did in your video. And you're like, this is a dirt goat path, and I'm riding this thing I've never touched before. And it's running on 2.5 cylinders. Like, yeah, okay, go. So like so much of travel is like going out somewhere.
Are they typically like worse bikes, or is it just a totally different setup?
Always a worse bike. It's always a worse bike.
Always a worse bike. Gotcha.
Dude, it's like these bikes.
I used to play tennis in high school. I remember like sometimes like people would be like, oh, let's go out and play tennis. And they'd have like shitty Walmart rackets. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, I literally can't even enjoy this. And you're bad at this, so it's not fun. But I'm playing with this turd of a racket. Like, I can't even, and people are like, oh, it's just a tennis racket or whatever, but it's not.
It's not.
I'm sure it's correlations with a lot of different things.
Right. So stunt riding, and this is something that people don't get. And like, I don't expect them to get it because they see it and they're like, oh, wow, you're just doing that. Just go do that. Like, you don't understand. Like, it's so difficult. And so many things go into the little details.
And it's kind of dangerous. Like, you can get hurt.
Oh, yeah.
And you can break the bike or whatever.
Right. And so everybody's setup is different, but so many things rely on other things. So you've got my handlebars rotated to where I like them, with my clutch, with my handbrake, with my front brake that I like, with my calipers, with my suspension set the way I like it. My foot pegs are these foot pegs in this position. My seat is this seat in this position. And all of that adds up into a totally different machine, right?
It's like a prosthesis almost. Like, like it'd be like, we lost your leg and whatever, but here's another one real quick, and it's
Right.
like, no,
Yeah,
this
it's
is
like, no.
custom fitted to me. I can't just
Right.
walk on this random thing.
Yeah. Well, because it comes into like muscle memory and how you've taught yourself. So when you teach yourself tricks, this is with anything, skateboarding, with basketball, you're teaching your body to do a certain thing without thinking about it. So I am using the clutch and the rear brake with 2 different fingers and holding on with the other fingers and modulating the throttle with this, and then I'm standing in a certain position in a certain way. And if you throw one of those things off, all of a sudden I have to think about that, and I'm not thinking about the other things I need to be thinking about. And if I have 4 of those things all the time, now you're trying to mentally juggle 5 things at one time. And then if you put an audience out there, you're trying to mentally juggle those things without crashing into those people. So those things add up. And what's interesting is a skill that I have developed that I didn't know I had is the ability to ride almost anything now. I can ride a piece of shit. I can ride something that other people they don't think you can wheelie, and that's for like having to force myself to focus on those things. Like you have a muscle memory of multitasking, muscle memory, or being able to break a habit to modify. It may be like my habit is to do this, but I don't have that thing I need, so I have to break that habit right now to be able to make this work.
Yeah.
And so you become a little bit more versatile that way.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me also of like, maybe in like the computer world, like you have like a certain editing software that you use, and then you need to use a different software.
Sure.
And it's like you've got all these, commands, and you're used to doing it, and you're like,
Right.
well, shit, I have to like learn how to do it this way or whatever.
Right.
Or you can play with your right hand, but you can't play with your left hand. So you know how to do it, but your left hand's not working with
Yeah.
your brain the same way as your right hand or
Yeah.
whatever. So you just become, like you said, you can ride everything. You're just like versatile. You can throw anything at you.
Yeah.
And most people can't really learn that because they probably only have the opportunity to ride their own stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's something else too. Like there's the thing where some guy will post a video from a show. Like one of my friends did a show in France, and he wasn't riding like he usually rides. And then a bunch of French riders were like, oh, this is bullshit. Why don't you bring us over? We can ride so much better. He was supposed to be professional. He was not professional. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, he's riding a bike he's never ridden before. It was running poorly. He's running a tire he's never used before. He's not at his practice spot. Like, you can talk shit because you can do this at your spot. You ride there every day. You know everything about this area and everything about your bike. Like, if I pull you outside your comfort zone, let's see how well you do. It's not, it's tough.
Yeah.
So you get, and the other thing is like the standards everywhere. Again, caveat, I do not mean to talk poorly about other countries or other cultures, but there are certain things that are just true. And standards for mechanical things are just nowhere near where they are in the US. And Europe. Europe and the US and Japan. They have a high standard for how things go. And like, dude, so many bikes I've gotten just are running on 3 cylinders or have no power, or are just like, my God, what have you done to this thing? Have you been storing this thing underwater for the past year? And they're like, what? It works fine. And like, in their view, it does work fine because
it's running.
They've only come so far for whatever reason. It's not a judgment on them. It's like they've come this far, so this is what they accept. And I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where I've been exposed to more things, and you can see how much farther things go if you have an engine that runs.
Yeah.
And so you go over, and it's I run into these things like Vietnam. I've done a lot of things in Vietnam, which is awesome because Vietnam, everybody should go to Vietnam. Go to Vietnam. It is one of the biggest culture shocks you can get. You're very far outside your comfort zone, and it's a great place to be. That being said, as far as technology there, it just is what it is. I don't know if you know anything about engineering or anything, but like I've seen people resurfacing cylinder heads with a stone and oil. Like they would take a stone, like a paving stone, like a piece of marble. This is in a shop. They'd pour motor oil on it, and then guys would take turns all day for days with the cylinder head, just scraping it back and forth. That's how they're resurfacing the cylinder head.
Oh my god!
And eventually it would work.
Yeah.
But like, it would work well enough to get running, and they were like, oh, it's running, it's fine. But that's not good enough if you want to be like
world class,
really
or whatever.
pushing what you want to do. But like, there's always the balance of like, all right, I'm here. Like, I'm not going to get this thing to where I want it. So at some point is like, do I want to be a dick and tell them that this is inadequate, or just run it? And at the end of the day, it was just like, yeah, we're just gonna run it. Let's just do the best we can and run it. But that became half the fun. Actually, I would go there. I would always go to Vietnam, and it was always me and Oga. He's a guy from Japan, from Tokyo, and then Rafał. He goes by Stunner 13. Check out all these guys; they're amazing riders. And he's from Poland, and he always came with his uncle. So it was a Polish guy, an American guy, and a Japanese guy. And it's not like, oh, I've got a Polish buddy who lives in Florida. It's like, no. He's in Poland. Oga is in Tokyo. Like, we meet there, and it's just like, all right, you guys brush up on your English because I don't know Japanese or Polish.
Yeah. Pretty convenient for the English speakers out there.
It is. But like, that's rad because you're seeing Vietnam through not only my eyes, but through the Japanese guy and through the Polish guy.
Yeah.
And, and so we go there, and it's almost like, what tricks can we do on these bikes that are not doing what they're supposed to do?
Yeah.
And like, dude, so many times, like, there have been middle of the show, a bike will shut off and Oga will go flying across the ground. We're like, dude, what are you doing? He's just like, we'll blame him for the bike. We know it was the bike, but we'll blame him. And you try to explain to the promoter, it's like, yeah, the bike shut off. Like, what can we do? It's like, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Like, you can't go to Japan and get another bike. You can't do it. It's cool. Like, we get it, but
yeah. That's funny, man.
Yeah.
So are some promoters like not understanding of that, or are they kind of like, yeah, we know?
Yeah, some promoters are not understanding of that, and again, a lot of that comes back to cultural things. I remember one time, one of the first times I went to Indonesia, the Indonesians had a motorcycle that was set up for stunt riding, and I mean, it was okay. It was acceptable. I give them credit for the resources they have. They always do great work, and they have their mechanics. And in Indonesia, there's not a lot of, like, people don't have garages. Like, there's not a lot of, it's not easy to be a hobbyist, to be, like, we're very fortunate in this country that we have a garage where we can go, and, like, the DIY culture is very much an American and a European thing. And people just can't do that other places.
Yeah.
So they don't expect, I'm the rider. So I go there and like, oh, you're a rider. And like, no, they didn't understand. Like, I'm a very poor dirtbag American. Like, I know you're promoting me as this thing, but like, I build all these things from scratch in my garage. Like, and if my engine breaks, I rebuild my engine. And I learned that by screwing up a couple engines, learning how to rebuild engines. But they don't know that. So you go over there and they'll be like, oh, these are mechanics. And I'm like, oh gosh, okay. So I'm like kind of watching and like, yeah, do this. And they were like, oh, you don't go over there. You're the rider. And I'm like, oh, okay. So the first practice I do a stoppie, which is on the front wheel. And I grab the front brakes, and the brake pads literally shoot out of the calipers. And I had to crash the bike. I had to low side the bike through the barricades because there's no front brakes. And the promoter comes running over and he's like, what are you doing? Why'd you crash the bike? And I didn't say anything. I walked over and picked up the brake pads, and I was like this. And that's when it clicked.
Did you know what it was?
Yeah, I knew what it was. He started hitting the mechanics and chewing them out in Indonesian. And I was like, I kind of felt bad for him, but I didn't because they were not letting me mess with the bike. But it took that to like break his
perception of what you were.
Yeah, he had to realize, okay, like this is something else. And from then on, it was cool. Well, and actually, no, he still didn't listen to me, but
but at least he kind of understood.
Yeah, but that's the kind of stuff you deal with.
What are, like, have you ever had any other kind of crazy things like that where, like, has anything gone, like, super bad at an event? Like, anyone gotten hurt or, anything like that?
No. I mean, that's
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really good because, I mean, that's kind of worst case scenario is, one of the audience members hurt.
Yeah, no, it's happened. That's something I'm always very, very conscious of because
it's kind of got to be your first priority over yourself.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I'll take a hit way before I let anybody else take a hit.
Yeah.
God forbid, especially a kid or something like that.
Oh, fuck.
I don't know if I could live with that.
Yeah. For sure.
And a lot of these places, they don't have barricades. They'll just say, like, here's a piece of caution tape, and so.
Jeez.
And in those situations, it's important to never, if it's a show, you don't win the show. You go out there and you dial it back to what you know you can do.
Yeah.
Know you can save. Know you can, like, put on a good performance and entertain the people, and dial it back so they don't know you're dialing it back. And it just, and I've been very fortunate that nothing nothing bad's ever happened.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, because obviously I've seen some of those videos, like especially out of like car shows where like a Mustang like spins out and hits the crowd, and you're like, Jesus Christ, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
Like you guaranteed that same guy that just crashed has seen a video of a guy doing that exact same thing, and he's still doing it.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah. Well, that's don't drive. Don't do anything that's outside of your means or your comfort zone, or like know how far to take it.
Yeah. And kind of going back to the thing in the beginning, you know, doing wheelies on the street and stuff, it's kind of like, you know, it's typically the dummies that ruin it for everyone else. It's like the guy that's doing the wheelie on the street, he's probably like pretty good, and he probably would be able to do it without hurting himself or others. But there have been dummies in the past that aren't good enough, and they try something stupid and they hurt people and they hurt themselves. So it's like
there's tons of that.
It always happens. You know, dummies ruin everything, marketers ruin everything, stuff that's cool always gets, you know, ruined. Same thing, you know, again, going back to the drone stuff, like, you know, when it was in the beginning, hobbyists were just figuring it out and there wasn't any regulations. Now there's all kinds of regulations, and because dummies ruined it. But I was going to ask you about kind of the future of the sport too. Like, do you see motorcycles going in the way of like electric cars? Like, do you see like electric motorcycles kind of becoming more of a thing, or is it too ingrained in the culture, you know, to be these gas, you know, powered machines that are loud and shit? Like,
that's tough, man. Like, I don't see internal combustion engines going away in the near future. I'm sure at some point they probably will. It's going to take a cultural change. As far as with stunt riding specifically, there's guys who are doing it on electric motorcycles, but it's definitely on the side, and it's definitely usually in situations where they have to use an electric motorcycle, or they may be indoors. For example, my friend Cisco is a French guy living in French Canada, but he rides. He's part of a Cirque du Soleil. So during a Cirque du Soleil event, he does some motorcycle stunts, and due to the nature of what it is, it's got to be an electric vehicle. You can't have
there's like gas fire and shit around.
You can't have a gas engine inside of
a tent,
right. So he's got to do an electric ride, and he's actually killing it because it's different.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, because motorcycles in general are crazy acceleration, like stupid fast, you know, torque and all that. But when you have an electric engine that, like, you know, just instant torque and all that stuff, I'm sure it's like a whole nother beast.
It's different.
Yeah. Have you ridden any?
And clutch modulation is different because it's got to be through resistance. It's not. None of it's mechanical. Like, so much what we do is a lot of clutch work, and that's all just the literal mechanical slipping of a clutch.
Yeah.
And when you have a clutch on an electric vehicle, there's nothing. All it's doing is it's modulating the resistance.
Yeah.
So you're engaging power based on the resistance.
Yeah, because like I know in like Teslas and stuff, like you can turn off the creep, like, you know, because like in a normal car, you just don't do anything to the pedals. The car is moving a little bit.
Right.
Same thing with all kinds of engines. You pull the clutch into, you know, make it so the engine's running, but it's not engaged into any gears or whatever. So that's actually really interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that, but it makes a lot of sense, especially with stunt riding. You've got to, you know, it's not just like trying to go forward. You're trying to do all kinds of weird stuff that the bike's not really, quote unquote, designed for.
Right. And the weight, electric bikes are heavier.
Yeah.
But again, it's changing. There are more and more guys doing things, and a lot of it's just for fun now, but I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
The one thing you lose is the noise. You lose.
And the noise is probably kind of helpful, like knowing the noises of the bike.
Oh yeah,
you know what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but from a spectator point of view, I don't know if you've ever been to professional races with motorcycles, or Formula One. I think they call it Formula E. Has the car racing, and I've been to those, and it's bizarre because all you hear is usually the torque of the engine as they decelerate. Yeah. It's just an electrical, and you hear the wind.
Is it the regenerative braking? Because I know I think on the Formula E, they have regenerative braking. Possibly, so like when they slow down, it's recharging the battery a little bit. So that might be part of that noise.
Some of those noises. And then with the motorcycles, you hear the chain. That's all you hear. You hear the whir of the chains at speed. So everything you associate with the speed is gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't get that raw feeling of like that.
It's kind of like going to watch fireworks that's only the lights, no sound.
Right, something like that. Or if like a firework exploded and it's just like, like that doesn't fit. That's not the right noise for that.
So true.
You know? So
that'd be pretty hilarious if they were able to make fireworks and did that, and you can make them do any noise.
The Chinese will figure it out.
Yeah, they'll figure it out for sure.
And I think that maybe in the future, like as the generations change, that will get replaced, or pretty soon, like that association will be made.
Yeah, because I know some guys are kind of like performance over anything. I don't care what it sounds like, but there is something like guttural and awesome about something loud and badass. Those freaking engine crackles when you downshift and stuff. Like it's fun. You get to feel that.
It's very raw.
Yeah. You feel like you're taming a beast or something.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is it's got to change is, so much of the custom and the DIY and the ability to build horsepower, build my own engines, do my own builds is not there yet with electric, but it's coming.
Yeah.
I know that, did you see the Joe Rogan podcast with the guy who rebuilt his own Tesla? Mm-hmm. That was very fascinating.
Rich Rebuilds or something like that, I think his name.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Really interesting.
It's funny because I stumbled upon his channel like a long time ago when he was like starting the whole thing, and it was cool to listen to that podcast because it's really fascinating. Because a lot of this electric stuff is, it's kind of like the new Wild West. A lot of these guys are making and tinkering with stuff that these manufacturers don't want you tinkering with or messing with at all.
Right. Well, that's what he's saying. There's no aftermarket.
It's because it's kind of dangerous too. You're working with like these huge battery cells and all that. Like it's pretty hardcore.
It can be, and a lot of it they don't want some guy bastardizing their thing because that affects their brand as well. But one of the things they talked about that is kind of happening is people are swapping Tesla engines into other cars.
Yeah.
Because that's something like
it's
everybody...
Like the new LS swap.
Exactly. The new LS swap, people are swapping Teslas. And that's kind of fascinating. I think that's really interesting.
Totally.
And that's cool.
Yeah, for sure. Because, I've seen like some of these crazy videos where they have like stripped out Teslas where the whole interior is stripped out like a freaking, race car, like a track car. And they smoke everything. Yeah. They can smoke everything even with the interior in it. But, even without it and whatever they're doing to these things to make them better and faster. And the Model S is like, it doesn't look like a crazy car, but it can beat like any Lamborghini and stuff, like the P100Ds and all that shit. Like they can smoke almost anything on the road, but also, it's very unassuming. So it's like the ultimate sleeper almost.
Right. Right. So I definitely think that's for sure that's coming. Like there's more as the technology. Well, actually, as the market develops, like this is, I'm a big free market person, and I am not really in favor of a regulation. So as long as these things don't get over-regulated, and if the market is there, and if it becomes more affordable, battery technology advances, so forth and so on, I think that guys are going to start racing them, and you're going to see people throw them in vehicles that have suspension and can perform and handle, and you're going to see them in different classes, and then you're going to see people making different, like there'll be aftermarket things for them, like adapters to throw it in any kind of vehicle or whatever it may be. And that's great. That's awesome. That's a whole new market that doesn't exist, and it's new wealth, it's new money, it's new jobs, it's a new hobby. It's awesome. I think it should go. Yeah, and it's something that can drive the culture more towards not only electric vehicles, but like the idea of more sustainable things.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm very much with certain products on the side of I don't care, don't let it be modular, make it the best it can be. I don't want to tinker with it. You guys are the experts. And then there's other certain things where I'm like, give me the access to switch things out. Give me the, I don't want this to be planned obsolescence. I want to be able to switch the battery on my phone if I want to, or upgrade the RAM later or whatever. And there's certain things like, I feel like Tesla and Apple are like more on that one side of like, we know best.
Don't touch it.
Big brothers, knows best. Don't touch it. And then you've got like, for example, the new Toyota Supra. There's actually apparently there's like little areas where there's like they've left room for you to bolt on stuff. Like they've literally specifically made like mounts and things in in the engine bay that are designed for like aftermarket companies to come in and make certain things to upgrade it, which is cool. And also it's kind of funny. I was watching the Doug DeMuro video of him talking about it, and he was like, I asked him, I'm like, so you basically made a car not as good as it could be on purpose? And they were like, yes. And they're like, does that mean that there's going to be an upgraded version coming out later? And they're like, yes, we could do that. And so it's like, they're kind of almost leaving it so like right now it's kind of this base version. You can upgrade it if you want, but also they're setting themselves up for the future that they could make a badass version themselves and sell it for more or whatever.
Yeah. Well,
it's kind of interesting.
Any car that was ever made is not the ultimate version of what it could be, because there's no need. Like, you don't.
Your Camry doesn't need.
There's no point to any of this stuff.
No.
None of it. Yeah. So you can always make something better. It's just true. I like that mentality of like, we know that people are going to tinker with this, so we want to encourage. This. There's an aftermarket, like, that's cool. Some companies don't. I know that I was just working on a movie, and some of the vehicles they had, they've got the Jeep Cherokee, the Tomahawk, which is like the fastest production SUV on the market. And they were having a horrible time. They have to modify. Because it has like a Hellcat
engine in or something, right? Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. And so Chrysler locks you out of the ECU. So you have to turn a lot of things off to be able to stunt drive these cars. Like, to be able to do slides and drifting a lot, you got to turn the ABS off. You got to turn a bunch of stuff off to make it more drivable for stunts, for whatever you need to do, right? And what they found is, like, Chrysler, the ECU, apparently, this is what one of the texts said, if you try to modify the ECU, it would basically melt. It would fry the whole ECU. It would self-destruct if you tried to tamper with it.
Wow.
So it's like, they're like, DIY, F you're not getting into this, and you won't get into this. So they would have to do like whole standalone systems just to get around not being able to go and reprogram the ECU.
Wow.
And that's kind of like the whole Tesla Apple thing. Like, you are locked out, and if you try to mess with it, we're
putting you on a list.
Yeah.
And we're gonna threaten you or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's nuts. Yeah, I'm definitely not about that. That's why I also hate like lock-ins with certain apps and stuff like that. It's like, people in like group messages with like iMessage. I'm an Android guy. Yeah. So people are always mad that I'm the green bubble guy. Yeah. I'm like, dude, I didn't choose this out of, trying to be the other. Right. I just like using Android phones. Yeah. We could also be messaging on like WhatsApp or like Facebook Messenger or Instagram or something, and we're equals.
Right.
But you're choosing to use iMessage because it's more convenient. I understand that. Yeah. And it's the built-in SMS platform. I get it. But it's like, don't hate the player, hate the game. You shouldn't be hating on me for being the green bubble. You should be hating on Apple that they're not treating everybody equal. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, they could easily come up with some protocol that everyone can react to messages or whatever, and whatever. They could make an iMessage app for Android, heaven forbid, but they're never going to do that because they've got iMessage lock-in like crazy for people. Sure. But anyways, I'm definitely on the side of let people do what they want, because people are going to do what they want anyways. You know what I mean? Like, give them the option if you want it or whatever. Yeah. Almost like turn on developer settings or don't.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, so the caveat is like, don't quote me 100% on that information about the
Chrysler thing.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go buy one.
This is just my hearsay thing I've heard from a guy who heard from a guy who heard from a guy. Like, I know there's issues there, but like, I don't want because there's always some guy who knows for sure who's going to just destroy the comments.
Actually, it doesn't fry.
You're an idiot because you don't know this fact. And it was like, no, I don't know the fact. I don't know the fact. I just know that like there's something there.
Yeah. Well, I think the reason why people get mad, especially with podcasts, is because it's a conversation and they feel like they're on like they want to yell into the conversation, but they can't. So they've got to like get that frustration out somewhere else, Yeah. They like want to jump in and be like, well, actually, blah, 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 but they can't. So they've got to somehow, whatever.
That's fine. I mean, I say stupid things, and I know like
me too.
People hear something stupid, it's like, wait, that was stupid. I can't unhear that stupid thing. I've got to fix this.
And the only way they can do it is by going and giving my podcast a 1-star on iTunes and writing a mean comment.
Don't do a 1-star. Just send me a message on Instagram whether or not I'm right or wrong.
Dude, I was looking at my reviews the other day, and there's like 4 1-stars, and all the rest are 5 stars. There's no in between at all. It's crazy. Like either you're like a fan and you're like, yeah, this is great, or you're like, fuck this guy because he said this one thing. Or fuck this guest. Like, my guest said something dumb, and then they're going to take it out on my whole show. And it's like, dude, I'm trying to have a discussion here. I don't agree with everything everyone says.
That's so hard. Like,
It's so dumb.
Go and have an hour and a half conversation and try not to say anything dumb.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really difficult. Try not to be wrong about something. Like,
for sure.
Well, I mean, I try not to be wrong, but I'm wrong about some things, and that's how it is. Mm-hmm. Have you ever read any of the studies that people have done about 1-star reviews?
I've heard like some anecdotes, but I don't know if I've ever dove into the actual studies.
It's pretty interesting about the mentality behind how there's so few in between things. Mm-hmm. It's either 5 or 1 star.
Yeah, because if you're so like it's kind of like we were talking about before with the silent majority, like in the middle.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I'm kind of like, it was good, but it wasn't that great. You're not going to go out of your way to say anything about it.
You're not going to say anything. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it was good, but like, I don't know if I'll go there again.
Yeah.
But if it was really good, you might be like, dude, holy shit, people need to know about this.
Yeah.
Or you're like, worst service ever, can't believe this happened, blah, 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 and they're trying to do everything to sabotage the business.
Yeah. So
it makes sense.
So my thing, I find star reviews useful in this way. I generally think that 5-star reviews, if they're not just like fake, somehow generated, like spam or bot or however they do it, that it's just optimistic people who would probably have a good time even on Planet Nazi. Like they're just like, like the most optimistic person. They're like, oh, this is great. This is the best ever. Because everything is the best ever.
They're the type of people that come out of a movie and they're like, that was the best movie I've ever seen.
Exactly.
I swear.
Exactly. And God bless those people because you need that positivity.
Yeah.
So I can't go by that because like they like everything and that's awesome, but I don't like everything because I can't. I wish I could, but I don't.
Yeah.
So I'll read the 1-star reviews. But with the 1-star reviews, it's not looking to see if it's really bad. It's reading into who that person is. It's a character study. Who wrote that? Why did they write that? Were they just pissed off because they're pissed off? Like, is there anything really relevant about the product in this? Or are they mad because, like, there was the wrong packaging or something?
Yeah.
Like, I'll do that on TripAdvisor or that or this. People are like, this restaurant sucked because this, and this. And you're like, that told me nothing about the food. That person was just pissed off because there's no toilet paper in the stall in the bathroom. So like,
or they felt entitled to whatever.
Yeah, right. So if I can't find any relevant 1-star reviews, it's probably pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. And like same, we got a Ring doorbell at our house, and there's like the Neighbors app or whatever attached to it, and you can like upload things about your neighborhood, and like this guy showed up to my door and said this, but the whole video conversation. So the way the Ring doorbell works for people listening, if you don't know, basically the doorbell has a camera on it, and it senses anytime there's motion.
Yeah.
So, you know, if there's like someone breaking in or stealing your packages,
right,
you get a notification on your phone.
Right.
And if you ring the doorbell, you can basically video conference with them. Obviously, there's no screen on their side, so they just hear you, but you can see everything.
Right.
And it's funny, the stuff that people put on there thinking they're in the right. They're like, this asshole came up to my door and was trying to blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that guy was just doing his job, man.
Yeah.
Like, he was not rude to you.
Right.
Like, I know you don't like solicitors, but like, you still gotta be civil. Like, and they comment on there like they're all in the right.
They're
and everyone's
revealing,
commenting like, wow, you're a dick.
Yeah.
Like, you're just revealing your character.
Yeah.
And like, you know, kind of like what you're saying, it's like, you know, the sponsors would hire you because you were easy to work with. You were like a general good person.
Yeah.
And I believe that about a lot of things. Like, I
Those
don't
are the
necessarily,
1-star people.
Yeah, I don't necessarily believe in like karma, but what goes around comes around, man. Like, you know, there's definitely what you put out in the world like affects people in a way that you might not ever see it come back to you, but it you know, it might or might not. But like, you gotta kind of have the benefit of the doubt with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and how you choose to see situations. Like what you were saying, like that person, all right, yeah, say a solicitor shows up and it's a pain. I'm doing something. I have to stop him to deal with him. At the same time, man, I don't think I could do that job. That is a humbling job. And he goes and puts himself out there. And how many houses did he just do before he got here?
And how many no's has he gotten?
Yeah, and how many assholes has he gotten? Mm-hmm. So for him to be here with a good attitude, trying to sell me something, like, just give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, just be nice. You don't even have to listen to him. Just be nice for the sake of being.
Even
nice.
if you politely, even without letting him say anything, be like, "Hey, I'm really sorry. Like, I just don't really do solicitors. Like, I don't really like when people come to my house. I'm really sorry. Like, I know it's just your job, but like, I just don't. I'm sorry. Like, I can't." And they're like, "Okay, that's cool, man. Whatever. You know."
Yeah.
Even that But if you're just being a straight up asshole to someone for just doing their job,
Right.
you know, it's like, come on, man.
Right.
It's like being mean to the McDonald's worker. You know, it's like, you know, they probably don't want to be there. It's one thing if they're actually being rude.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's like, you know, they messed up your order. It was probably the guy in the back. It's not the cashier
Right.
or whatever. It's like, but people just
yeah.
want to take out their anger on whatever.
Yeah.
Same thing with like flights. They yell at the people at the desk for the flight being delayed. It's like, they didn't do anything.
Right.
They can't even control it either.
Right.
It's like there's, you know, but they want to take out their anger on something, so
Yeah,
they do
it's
it.
the-
They write the 1-star review.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, I feel like this is a good place to wrap things up. It's been almost like 2 hours, man. But
wow.
I know time flies when you're having a good conversation.
Yeah.
But is there any other like, you know, last things you want to mention or anything that people should know about what you do or who you are or any last or anything you want to plug, your social media, whatever?
No, yeah, just Instagram is where I primarily live because it's easy and it's straightforward.
And it's just your full name?
Yeah, Aaron Twite,
Twite.
AARONTWITE. Follow
Are there
me on
any other
Instagram.
Aaron Twites that you found?
Nope. Yeah, there's some British guys, there's some Nigerian dudes out there.
Anyone try to buy your account?
No, that's the awesome thing about having a weird last name is
Yeah.
I had my account.
Yeah,
like,
Deitch is a weird one. Not very many Deitches out there.
Yeah, that's perfect.
The other day I was telling him, I think I was telling you, I got put in a group message with a bunch of other people with the last name Deitch, and there was like some family reunion thing, and I didn't know any of them.
You should show up.
I know I should. It'd be kind of funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were like, and then one person private messaged me and was like, wait a second. I don't think you're supposed to be in that group. I'm like, I don't think I'm supposed to be in that group either.
You guys have a good time though.
Yeah, have fun, Deitches.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, man. So everyone, of course, go follow Aaron if you want to see some awesome stunt stuff. I'm sure I'll repost some of your videos on my Instagram too, so people can go check it out.
Sure.
But yeah, thanks for watching. Everybody. Any other last things?
No, I had a great time. Thanks for having me. Good chat.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, Aaron, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, man.
And
My pleasure.
we'll see you later, everybody. Boom, there you have it. Thanks for listening, guys. If you made it to the end of the episode, that's a very good thing because I think that means that you enjoyed yourself. You had a good time listening and hanging out with me and Aaron. And if you did, you heard us talk about my friend Steele Davis quite a bit. He's the one who introduced us. And I would recommend that now that you're done listening to this episode, if you're looking for a new episode, go back to episode 108 if you haven't already, and go listen to the episode I did with Steele Davis. It was amazing. He's a world famous, really, drone pilot. He's one of the only full-time professional drone pilots in the entire world. And on that episode, we talked about all kinds of crazy stuff. And we even told the story about how he went to jail for a little bit for flying his drone. It was an awesome episode. Go check it out. That was episode 108. Another episode that I think you would really enjoy is episode 115 with Ed Bolian. He's the founder of VinWiki, which is an amazing app, but also an awesome car YouTube channel. They have like 700,000 subscribers or something crazy. Ed is an awesome guest. He's been on the show a couple of times, but during that episode, we talked all about the future of cars. We talked about some of the cars that he's owned, some amazing car stories. I think if you enjoyed this episode, you'd really enjoy going and listening to episode 115 with Ed Bolian. All right, so if you enjoyed the show, which again, you made it to the end, please take a screenshot, share it on your Instagram story. That really means a lot. Share where you're listening. A lot of people share things on their Instagram story, recommendations, podcasts, stuff like that. And also, if you're in a situation where people are talking about podcasts, I would really appreciate it if you just brought up the podcast if you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for sharing the podcast. I've gotten a lot of really good feedback recently. We're on a roll. We're on some good momentum with the show as of the last couple weeks. If you want to follow me on social media, you can go to my website, andrewdeitch.com. You can find all the links there. But that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you guys next week for episode 120. Going to watch fireworks that's only the lights, no sound.
Right, yeah, something like that. Or if like a firework exploded and it was just like, like that doesn't fit. That's not the right noise for that.
So true.